Behind every popular and iconic television series is a web of secrets and hidden agendas. For years, fans have conjured up various theories that now haunt our mind. Scrubs is an American sitcom that aired on NBC in 2001 for 9 seasons and 182 episodes. The show centers around the fresh out of medical school doctors JD and his best friends Christopher Turk and Elliot Reed. Together, these three begin their internship at Sacred Heart Hospital. At the hospital, they meet a variety of new characters, including the chief of medicine, Dr. Bob Kelso, JD's mentor, Dr. Perry Cox, Carla Espinoza, the nurse, and a deceitful, prank-loving janitor. Most of the employees of the Sacred Heart Hospital have left fans talking, but not as much as the janitor. This character is the only one without a real name. He's also mysterious and takes things a bit too far. This fan-favorite show has found itself on Reddit, where the janitor finds himself at the center of many theories. The first theory concerning this character is that he's not real. Some have suggested that he's merely a figment of JD's imagination. Supporting evidence for this can be found in the first season, where JD was the only person to ever interact with the janitor. Coffee Joseph suggested this theory on a subreddit, and many people were in support of the idea. They added more credence to this by suggesting that it may explain the reason why he doesn't have a real name. The scenes that involve this specific character are all so bizarre that they may as well be a dream or a fantasy. Another popular fan theory is that the janitor is really part of a secret experiment. This idea found itself onto the Reddit forum as well, where fans suggested that he was a trained psychologist who was merely analyzing the doctors for pure research purposes. Fans point out the unusual level of control that Janitor has over his surroundings, as well as his ability to manipulate people. There are various scenes that can also be used as supporting evidence, where the character is shown to be psychoanalyzing some of the employees. An agreed-upon aspect of the theory is that the hospital's janitor is actually so overqualified that he becomes bored with his job, resulting in his various out-there antics. Janitor, though, isn't the only character who found himself at the center of some wild ideas. There's another strange idea that JD, Dr. Cox, and Dr. Kelso are all the same characters in different phases of their careers. Despite the fact that these characters are being played by different actors, Redditors were quick to jump on this theory. MNM0412 took to the fan theories subreddit with this idea. He explained that JD was a doctor who was just starting out. He's in the wide-eyed, naive, and optimistic phase, where he desperately wants to help people and is blind to the uglier side of healthcare. Dr. Cox is also JD, except he's at the point of being at the hospital for quite some time. He's worn down, jaded, and cynical, but he still wants to do what's right and fight for his patients. Dr. Kelso is an end-stage phase, where the same doctor is nearing the end of his career, having to deal with the things that now haunt him. He tries not to show these emotions, and often has to play the monster. In one scene, Dr. Cox tells JD that he reminds him of himself when he was younger. It's implied that Dr. Kelso was idealistic and loving prior to the system making him jaded. We also often see how each of these characters imitates one another in a mocking sense, such as when Dr. Kelso retires and mocks both of the other doctors, and when JD imitates Dr. Cox right to his face. The cherry on top that concludes this fan theory is that when Dr. Kelso retired, Dr. Cox took his position. The Looney Tunes universe is one of the most colorful and diverse shows of all time. It includes a variety of characters, each with a different personality and background. The cartoon has been named a timeless classic, with many spin-offs and movies resulting from the original. It's no surprise that this diverse series has accumulated a treasury of theories. Nato Dan took to Reddit to spawn one old Bugs Bunny theory. Their opening statement was, "I believe there's actually an abstract continuity to the episodes involving Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd." What this Reddit user is implying is that Bugs and Fudd's relationship doesn't restart each episode, but is a continuation with no interruptions. This idea, of course, doesn't relate to the episodes that take place in a different period. Nato Dan even constructed a timeline that begins with the Robot Rabbit episode. In this episode, Fudd is a carrot farmer who discovers a rabbit on his farm. After the robot pest controller ends up as scrap, Bugs walks off into the sunset, leaving behind an angered farmer whose life is now ruined. In a different episode, Fudd has a wife who hadn't been seen in previous episodes. The Redditor explains that Bugs' carrot-eating and robot-wrecking antics financially destroyed Fudd, which resulted in him losing his farm and his wife encouraging him to take up hunting instead. There are countless episodes in which this character is portrayed as a hunter, including Rabbit Fire, which starts out with Fudd saying, "Be very, very quiet, I'm hunting rabbits." What's odd about this quote is that he made it very clear that he was particularly hunting rabbits. Fudd, however, has no knowledge of whether or not it's duck season, rabbit season, or any other season when he starts hunting rabbits. This is because he isn't just looking for any rabbit, he's specifically looking for Bugs. This same trail continues on for years and is present in many episodes. Another Looney Tunes fan also took to Reddit with an even stranger theory on the show. He believes that each episode includes a new set of characters from multiple universes. This suggests that the audience is really watching a separate and distinctive multiverse in every single Looney Tunes episode. This idea depicts the cartoon as experiencing something similar to the multiple universes that we see in Rick and Morty. One Punch Man is a manga, a Japanese webcomic, and an anime series. The main protagonist in the series is Saitama, the most powerful being to exist in the series. In the anime, he's faced with a self-imposed existential crisis, which is that he's too powerful to gain any excitement from battle. We also meet Genos, the deuteragonist and 19-year-old cyborg who acts as Saitama's disciple. Described as one of the worst anime theories ever, is the whole series is nothing more than a dream. This idea has found its way into various television show theories. This mildly saddening theory that's been circulating on the internet suggests that Saitama is an unemployed or homeless man who wishes to be a hero. Everything that happens is merely the main character's fantasy of being an extremely powerful hero. One supporting piece of evidence for this idea is that everyone in the protagonist's life is constantly underestimating him, which may be hinting at the idea of how he's being treated in real life. A similar theory is that Saitama became so powerful by the crab monster at the start of the series that he slipped into a coma after defeating it, and after being struck incredibly hard, he was struck so hard that he went flying into a garage, the kind of blow that no human can just walk away from. This suggests that all the events happening in the series are playing out in Saitama's mind during a hospital visit, where he lies in a coma due to the injuries he may have sustained. Despite this theory gaining a whole lot of hate and being the center of many debates, some believe that there is supporting evidence for this that may make the theory a lot more plausible. One fan and theorist brought this idea up to his OmniGeek YouTube channel. Here, he explains that when we're children, we have fantasies of becoming superheroes or other incredible beings. But when we grow up and have to set those things aside, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've disappeared. If the character is in a coma, this childlike mindset may be brought forth. Dreams are a place where logic doesn't exist. Another piece of evidence that supports this idea is that when he was a child, Saitama even said that he wanted to be a superhero who goes around defeating the bad guys in a single punch. Strangely, this is exactly what he became. But looking at it from the theory's point of view, this character's childhood desires manifest themselves in the only place they can, the imagination, as he lies in his hospital bed in a coma, allowing freedom to his repressed subconscious. In this universe, though, it's entirely possible for the average human to become a superhero. But as OmniGeek indicates, the fact that he becomes a hero isn't the problem. The problem is that he became a hero in the exact way that he wanted to, but he was able to defeat villains in one punch with absolutely no effort. 1899 is a Netflix original series that is a mystery all on its own. It centers around a migrant steamship that's heading west as it departs from London and heads towards New York. The passengers are a diverse group of multinational origins, united through their homes and dreams for their future abroad. While embarking on their voyage, though, they encounter a migrant ship adrift, and their whole venture takes a twisted turn. What they find on board leads off of the road to the promised land to a terrifying nightmare. Like many other incredible mystery shows that came before it, 1899 left viewers with many more questions than answers, prompting them to fill in the holes. One fan theory revolves around a central character, Mara. This of course involves some spoilers to the show, so beware. During the series, we learned that the whole thing is really a simulation. In the final Season 1 scene, Mara awakens to find herself on a spaceship with her companions from the two ships still connected by tubes. It appears that at that moment, she's escaped the simulation. But what if she didn't? Some fans believe that this awakening is merely another layer to the whole simulation. We were already fooled earlier on in the season by Henry Singleton's reality, thinking that he was a puppet master, which was actually just another layer to the false reality. Fans point out that there's absolutely no evidence to confirm that the spaceship in the year 2099 isn't just another part of the simulation. It's also pointed out that just because the main character, whose memory is constantly questioned, shows up in a different setting, doesn't necessarily certify that this is the truest version of reality. When she does wake up, Mara finds a note that was specifically placed there for her long before she even awoke. That note also held the exact same phrase that was written in the ship's books. Fans just aren't convinced that this spaceship was even real at all. There's also the idea that the passengers aboard the ship are all prisoners. The first few episodes of the series dove into each of the characters who were aboard the Kerberos, eventually narrowing down on Mara and her family. This makes one wonder why the rest of the characters even mattered. This has prompted some to surmise that each of these characters is stuck together as prisoners, who are either all connected to one common incident, or they're fugitives from around the world, sent to endure the prison sentence aboard the ship, in a seemingly never-ending nightmare. Alternatively, all of the characters on the Kerberos are not real, and are actually artificial intelligence. This idea seems to connect to another theory, which suggests that the simulation is a test of morality. The artificial intelligence, according to the theory, was engineered by Mara. She places them in an elaborate situation to see how long they would respond. Evidence? Well, at the start of each episode, Mara's voice can be heard saying, "Wake up." This indicates that she may be the centerpiece of the entire reality. Pokémon is one of the most well-known animated series. It follows the antics of the main protagonist, Ash Ketchum, and his friends. It premiered on TV in Tokyo, Japan, and was later dubbed into English in North America. The first fan theory relating to this series concerns the lovable purple blob, Ditto. Fans posit that this Pokémon is a failed clone. It's been suggested that scientists tried to make a clone of the small pink and mythical Pokémon, Mew. Some believe that Mew was the result of a cloning attempt prior to the creation of the infamous Mewtwo. There's also a bit of evidence to support this idea. The two creatures are similar in color, and both have the same shiny form, which is light blue. Both of them also weigh 8.8 pounds. Ditto takes the form of an amorphous blob that looks like a failed experiment that was unable to take the form of Mew, and so it stays as its blobby self. Another piece of supporting evidence is that both of these characters are the only two types of Pokémon that learn the move Transform. Other theories regarding the series center around Ash, more specifically his parentage. Delia Ketchum, Ash's mother, is a very mysterious figure in the anime. We don't really know a whole lot about her, and we don't know a lot about the main character himself either, and this is why he finds himself at the center of so many theories. But one persisting, unanswered question is who his father is. According to Pokémon lore, Delia reveals that Ash's father married her and then left to be a Pokémon trainer. In Pokémon Live, we come to learn that Giovanni, the gym leader, and the boss of an organized crime group were once romantically involved with Delia. Delia was also apparently part of the budding criminal organization. She explains that she left Giovanni after meeting Ash's father, but many fans think that this sounds a little bit fishy. But they didn't stop there. The next candidate for Ash's father is quite shocking: Pikachu. Throughout the series, we never see or learn who the real father is. We often hear that he's a great Pokémon trainer, which also supports the idea that it could be Giovanni, but that's all the information we have on him. This fan theory suggests that the father was part of an experiment. The experiment is one that would transfer the human mind into the body of a Pokémon, a procedure that would be irreversible. Fans and theorists conclude this idea by pointing out a supporting factor, which is that Professor Oak gave Pikachu to Ash because he knew that it was his father, but didn't want to tell him that. South Park is an American adult animated comedy television series. It aired on Comedy Central in 1997 and won Emmy Awards in 2005, 2007, 8, 9, and 12 for outstanding animated programs. The series is set in a fictional town in Colorado and focuses mostly on 4 boys: Eric, Stanley, Kyle, and Kenneth. The show was initially created to appear low budget with a crude cutout style. It's almost always winter in South Park, with snow covering the ground. The area is also populated with odd characters, such as Jesus, who hosts a talk show. The show often hosts taboo subjects and parodies many public figures or celebrities. The antic-filled series was also unable to evade the theories that its fans have conjured up over time. The first theory concerns South Park's officer Bar Brady. This character is the former Maine police officer who exhibits a poor vocabulary. He's noted to be incredibly incompetent and incapable of solving any of the crimes. Perhaps it's his inability to do his job that led to this odd theory. According to one Reddit user and some agreeing commenters, Officer Bar Brady isn't really a cop at all and never was. The Redditor believes that this character is really just supposed to be the village idiot, and he certainly takes on that persona. The town feels bad for him and allows him to play cop for petty crimes. But where's the supporting evidence for this? There are 4 main points that may support this idea. The first relates to the police badge that Bar Brady wears. It's misshapen, as though it was self-made, and he also runs his whole operation from a very small building. No one in the show ever takes him seriously, or even calls him when there's a real ongoing crime. Instead, the crimes are directed to the Park County Police Station, to a different cop. The officer also has no partners or other cops helping him out. Many times, children and adults have come in or left his prison as they pleased, without him even noticing. The last piece of evidence for this is that whenever there's a crime taking place, he just happens to be around, and all he ever says is, "Move along, nothing to see here." The reason he only ever says this at the scene of the crime is because that's the one thing he was told to say, until a real police officer shows up. Another popular theory about this animated comedy relates to South Park's world and how it's being portrayed. While theorists agree that South Park Town is a real place, everything that happens there may not be as it seems. According to Run Reddit user Ninja Tofu 1014, everything that's happening in the show is merely just the boys attempting to explain the world around them, the things they see and what they hear. For children, the world is an odd and mysterious place to be, so it's not unlikely that South Park is just an overactive imagination at play. The Reddit user maintains the fact that South Park is completely realistic, but everything else, such as the fantastical happenings, the out-of-the-ordinary events, and the supernatural, are all combinations of a child's mind. One example directs us to the episode About Last Night. In this episode, we see the 2008 election of Obama. It's here that the boys' parents are seen as overreacting to the election of the president. But the boys don't really have an understanding of politics, or know the difference between the 2 candidates, so they couldn't understand why their parents would react in this way. The plotline of Obama and McCain being diamond thieves is a way of justifying their parents' reactions. They turn the presidential candidates into something that they perceive as cool, perceiving it in the way of an action-packed movie. Most of the episodes seem to take on a movie plotline, because the children connect with their imaginations in an attempt to understand things that they aren't yet able to comprehend. This theory also explains another mystery of the show, Kenneth. Kenneth often meets his demise doing something odd or fantastical, and then shows up in the next episode perfectly healthy and unharmed. This is because he's merely a figment of the boy's imagination. Kenneth did in fact meet his end, but his friends have a hard time letting him go and honor him by imagining that he's there. When he meets his end again in some of these episodes, it's the realization that he wasn't there in the first place. Severance premiered on Apple TV Plus in February of 2022 as an American science fiction psychological thriller created by Dan Erickson. The series centers around Lemon Industries, the biotech corporation that uses the severance procedure. The procedure allows the industry to separate the non-work memories from the work memories of their employees. One of the employees who's been severed starts to uncover a web of conspiracies from both sides of the division. Mark Scout, the main character, leads a team of office workers whose memories have been divided. During the show, a mysterious colleague appears outside of work, and the journey to discovering the truth begins. Many of the fan theories relating to the show concern the real purpose behind the severance procedure. Initially, we're led to believe that this procedure was the solution to balance out work life and personal life. It's the surgical split between personal consciousness and professional consciousness. Essentially, Lemon Industries isn't just controlling its employees' time, but also creating an unquestioning and obedient workforce. The perspective paints a chilling picture that Lemon could be entering a society where free will is no longer a thing. This is where the first theory comes into play, in the form of the question, could the severance procedure in the office be a trial run for a more widespread societal application? Some fans believe that the true reason behind the procedure is actually an experiment. The industry is experimenting with its workforce to refine a technique that they may deploy on a more global level. According to the idea, Lemon's ambitions actually go way beyond a quiet, controlled office space and extend into every corner of society. The procedure therefore emerges not just as a tool for total control, but also as the harbinger of a new era that redefines the meaning of humanity altogether. Another fan theory that's come about concerns the outside world. This suggestion, though, adds yet another level of complexity to the already stacked narrative. The theory here speaks of yet another confinement. It posits that when the office workers clock out and step into the real world, they aren't in the real world, but are actually stepping into another form of containment that was sophisticatedly designed to make the so-called sheep unaware of their confinement. This idea is a reflection of the Truman Show, one that suspects that there's a dome covering the town, and the stars are just tiny holes that have been poked into it. Adding a dash of spice into the mix are the anomalies and glitches. These glitches have been spotted by some eagle-eyed fans, but what if they're not there by mistake at all? According to some, this may be an intentional trail of breadcrumbs that may have been left over by the creators. Fans point to the scenes where characters pause unnaturally, or mirror reflections that don't seem to add up. These simple and small additions may hint at a simulation type of world. My Hero Academia is a manga that was adapted into an anime in 3 movies. The series is set in the modern day, where people with special powers called quirks roam among society. The world, however, has become chaotic, and the majority of the population must now depend on the pro-heroes who've risen to fight off the powerful villains. One boy, Izuku, also known as Deku, is quirkless, which means that he doesn't have any powers, but he does still dream of becoming a hero. Growing up without a quirk was a large part of Deku's character in the series, but what if he actually did have a special power? During his childhood, he visited Dr. Garaki to determine if he had a latent quirk or not, but some fans believe that when this happened, Garaki actually stole his powers and lied about it. This would explain why he's quirkless, despite his mother having the powers. It would also explain Dr. Garaki's role in the whole series, and his connection to the main character. One Reddit user took to a subreddit with evidence in support of this idea. This is where another character, known as All for One, is brought in. He's sadistic and a malevolent man who rules from the shadows. According to Redditors, if this character had been able to get his hands on the transformation quirk, then he would have made himself look like a doctor. If he could transform himself into a doctor, then this would mean he probably has some sort of analysis quirk. This would allow him to analyze Deku to determine if his quirk was worth stealing, and perhaps it was. We then stumble upon another character, Toru Hagakure, who's also known as the stealth hero, Invisible Girl. She was a Class 1A student at UA High School, and she learned how to become a hero. 8 years later, she graduated as a pro hero alongside her classmates. During the series, the UA Academy falls victim to the League of Villains, and a variety of characters come under the suspicion of fans. Alongside Kaminari, Hagakure was on the top list of traitor suspects. There was no clear motivation, though, for her to even side with All for One, but she did have the means to do it. Her invisibility would have made it all the more easy for her to avoid being seen. But there's one problem with this theory. Her clothes wouldn't turn invisible. But fans managed to find a solution to this problem that would support their theory. They suggested that she could have made a suit out of her own hair, using the same technology as Lemillion. This means that she would be able to meet with the League of Villains without being detected, and even send them messages through infrared light. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series was brought to American TV screens in December of 1987. The series follows the lives of 4 turtles who became mutated by some sort of mysterious alien substance. They were raised in the sewers, and they had to rise to defend the people of New York City against evil forces. The Turtle brothers include Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Donatello. Leonardo, also known as Leo, acts as the group leader, who embodies honor and responsibility. Donatello is the brains of the operation. He's resourceful, possesses wisdom, and serves as the go-to IT expert. Michelangelo is the clown, the funny guy who makes everyone laugh and is seen as the entertainer. He's full of charisma and energy. Then we have Raphael, who's the rebel. He exhibits bravery and strength, but a lack of impulse control. The first fan theory here relates to the weapons that Master Splinter gave each of the Ninja Turtles. According to the theory, Leo is given katanas, the most lethal of weapons, which teaches him that despite his ethics, he may be forced to take some lives in order to protect others. Donatello was handed a simple wooden staff, and some believe that this is to teach him creativity, forcing him to do as much as he can with what he has. Michelangelo was given a nunchuck, which is infamous for its complexity and often injures the user instead. This forces the character to focus during combat. Raphael, the most violent of all the turtles, was presented with sais, a defensive weapon used in peacekeeping. This allows him to learn patience and discipline. A much more intriguing fan theory relating to the bunch is that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are actually the A-Team of an alternate universe. Theorists suggest that each turtle is a member of the infamous A-Team. Leonardo is Hannibal, the serious leader. Raphael is Barracus, with his hot-headed persona. Donatello is the brains of the operation and clearly Murdoch. And Michelangelo is Face, the ladies' man. We then come to the Seven Sins fan theory, with the colors that each character wears being the giveaway. It begins with the 4 turtles, the first being Michelangelo, who wears an orange mask. He's the representation of gluttony. Evidence for this is that he's constantly eating pizza, and is even known to put some pretty insane toppings on it, including guacamole and jelly beans. Raphael adorns red, making him the embodiment of anger. He's known as the antisocial character of the group, and is always finding a way to channel his rage. Donatello wears purple, making him the representation of pride. He's known to take pride in his vast amount of knowledge. Leonardo, the leader of the turtles, wears blue, making him the sloth's sin. Fans point out the times when Leonardo leaves the rest of the team to their own devices. He also regularly feels unworthy of leadership and goes off on his own. Everyone looks up to him, which presents the idea that the regular sabbaticals he takes are just an effort to escape the responsibility. When we meet the other characters, like April, she primarily wears yellow, making her greed. She would do anything to get the best news scoop, including holding her own boss at ransom in an effort to get a news crew. She also places herself in danger to get an exclusive look. Irma takes on the light blue color, making her the representation of lust. She's mostly seen waiting around for some handsome guy and even goes into the sewer chasing one. Shredder is jealousy. Evidence for this can be found in his origin story. He's known to have taken the life of Hamato Yoshi and his lover over a rejection. Unfortunately, though, he never wears green at all during the entire series, but fans maintain their idea that he's one of the 7 sins. Parks and Recreation is the American television sitcom that aired from 2009 to 2015. Just like The Office, the series was styled as a mockumentary, where the episodes are filmed as though by a documentary crew, but are actually entirely scripted. The show follows the antics of a group of government employees in a Midwestern town known as Pawnee, Indiana. Along the way, we meet Leslie Knope, who's enthusiastic about her career as a civil servant. We meet her gruff boss, Ron Swanson, who's an outdoorsman. Supporting characters include the nurse Ann Perkins, the intern April Ludgate, and the lovable musician Andy Dwyer, along with many more characters. The show is filled with humor and is the furthest thing from serious. But despite this, some fans have uncovered some aspects that could be potentially hidden in the show and have gone unnoticed. The first fan theory was presented on Reddit by The Black Duck. They set forth the idea that Leslie Knope is actually very wealthy. This makes sense because she's always spending money on random things, even though she's employed by the government. She spends a fair amount on scrapbooking, waffles, and anniversary gifts. Leslie also donated $1,000 for rec classes, paid April's London fare, and may have tried to fill the pit with $35,000. Where did the money come from, though? There are many suggestions for this, such as a trust fund or an inheritance of some sort, but where that money came from doesn't really matter here. It's just the fact she spent so much money on various things that are throwing some of the fans off, leading to theories that she's not so secretly rich. We then move on to another character, Jerry, who's also a major character in the series. For some unknown reason, everyone is always insulting this character. With no clear indication as to why, fans are left to conjure up their own reason. What if Jerry is the only truly happy character in the show? Some believe this is the reason for his harassment. While every other character's life is filled with heartache, confusion, and drama, Jerry has the perfect life. He has a flawless relationship, a job he enjoys, wonderful children, and is a skilled painter and pianist. It appears to some fans that the other characters are just trying to knock him down a peg. For ages, future predictions have been attributed to a different show, The Simpsons, but some have found something odd in Parks and Recreation too. In episode 2 of season 1, Ron and Jamie, the group heads to Chicago in the summer of 2017. It's here that one of the characters mentions the Cubs World Series win, leading some to speculate that the series may have predicted the Chicago Cubs winning the 2016 World Series. The Last of Us is a horror television series based on a video game that was released in 2014. The game, which was produced by the development company Naughty Dog, proved to be so popular that the decision was made to turn it into a series, and it was well received by audiences. The plot of both the game and the series' first season is that a pandemic brought about by a mass fungal infection called cordyceps broke out across the world in 2013. It could not be contained and started turning people who were infected into strange feral creatures that resembled zombies. It's up to one of the main characters, a man named Joel, to transport a teenage girl named Ellie out of a military quarantine area so that she can be handed over to a group called the Fireflies. They travel west in hopes that they'll find a cure for the pandemic, but there are many obstacles along the way. Not only do they avoid and at times fight the zombie-like creatures, but they're also hunted by other survivors with nefarious intentions, as well as people from the military who have figured out that Ellie is immune to the infection. To make matters worse, whenever a fight breaks out, the noise from discharged firearms attracts hordes of infected people whose only purpose is to infect as many others as possible, ensuring that the infection spreads as far and wide as it can. The game was hugely successful, and the show also did very well, but it spawned several fan conspiracy theories. One suggests that the infection was spread from a natural disaster, such as an earthquake, which released the spores and started infecting people around the world. The disaster also prompts people to gather en masse, spreading the infection faster via bites from those who've already been infected. Furthermore, medical and military personnel who were present at these gatherings would quickly have been bitten and would no longer have been able to render any aid to people who'd been injured on their journey there. Another theory suggests that Joel was part of a special containment procedure that was breached, explaining why the task force was able to respond to the outbreak so quickly, but was ultimately powerless to stop the infection's spread. Some fans have also wondered whether Joel may be immune to the infection, since he seemingly had some no-second thoughts when encountering the infected, and charges into combat with no regard for his own safety. But one of the most discussed theories is how Ellie managed to become immune. Since we know that Ellie's mother Anna is no longer alive, it's certain that she was not immune, and this is also confirmed in a letter she wrote to Ellie that appears in the game, which reads, "You're not even a day old, and holding you is the most incredible thing I've done in my life, a life that is about to get cut a little short." At first, it was suggested that Anna simply passed away after giving birth to Ellie, but this didn't explain how Ellie became immune. It was then theorized that Anna was bitten while pregnant, and that this acted as an inoculation against the infection. This theory was later confirmed by the show, and finally, fans had the answers that they were looking for, even if it was only to one of the many theories out there. Dexter, a crime series that aired in October of 2006. Dexter is a crime series that first aired in October of 2006, and since then it's gained somewhat of a cult following. The show is based on a 2004 novel by Jeff Lindsay called Darkly Dreaming Dexter, with the main character being a man called Dexter Morgan. Fair warning, this entry contains spoilers for Dexter New Blood. Dexter is employed by the Miami Metro Police Department, where he works as a forensic analyst. But unbeknownst to his colleagues and his sister Deborah, who's a homicide detective for the same department, Dexter has a secret and very dark second life. Dexter was adopted when he was still young and was told by his adoptive parents, Harry and Doris Morgan, that his mother and father had passed away. It's later revealed that his father passed due to a car accident, while his mother's life was ended by an illegal substance smuggler in full view of Dexter and his brother. But Dexter's main secret is the fact that he was born a psychopath who has violent tendencies. He struggled with this as a child, but when he turned 10 years old, his adopted father, Harry, noticed what was going on and helped him find an outlet for his condition. He taught Dexter to hunt, and eventually this evolved further with Dexter seeking out people who he deemed unfit to be a part of society, such as murderers and other criminals who prey on the weak. At some point, he decided to make it his hobby to find these people and end their lives. Hence, he becomes a serial killer while working for the police department, often leaving viewers on the edge of their seats as he does his best not to get caught by the officers that he works with. The show was an instant hit as soon as it was released, and before long, people around the world were talking about it and trying to figure out how the plot would evolve. The original run of Dexter lasted for a full 8 seasons, with 96 episodes being produced. But after it concluded, it became clear that fans not only wanted more of the show, but also had some unanswered questions. And in 2021, a 10-episode sequel called Dexter New Blood was released. This is to be followed by a prequel called Dexter Original Sin that was slated for release in mid-December of 2024. It'll follow Dexter's beginnings at the police department and has already spawned a fan theory. Since Dexter loses his life at the end of Dexter New Blood, fans were confused as to how the younger Dexter's inner voice would be presented in the new series. Some thought that the voiceover would be provided by a younger actor, or that there simply wouldn't be any voiceover, which left many people skeptical about whether the new series would be as engaging as the first two. Excitement had been building for some time after the prequel's release was announced, and fans were elated to learn that Dexter, who's played by actor Michael C. Hall, would be making at least one cameo appearance. When the official full-length trailer was released, it was also confirmed that Hall would be providing the voice for the younger Dexter's inner voice, and it's fair to say that fans of the franchise are waiting with bated breath for the show to be aired. If you grew up in the 1980s, you'll be very familiar with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a cartoon that featured 4 sewer turtles that came into contact with a mutagen called ooze. They were raised by a human ninjutsu teacher called Yoshi, who kept the turtles as pets. But when he got into an altercation with drones owned by the Krang, a race of evil aliens, he was also splashed by the ooze and turned into a rat called Splinter. Following this, he took the turtles down into the sewer to hide them from the rest of the world and started teaching them martial arts. At one point in the series, he's given the chance to become human again, but realizes that he wouldn't fit into society anymore. He also feels that he would rather live with his turtle sons and so remains a rat. Together, he and the 4 turtles, named Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo, fight against an adversary called Shredder, and his cronies, who seek to attain as much power as possible by any means necessary in order to create a massive army. It was without a doubt one of the most popular cartoons of its day, and resulted in several movies and follow-up TV series being released. The show remains as popular today as it was back then, if only for nostalgic reasons, and has even spawned a few fan conspiracy theories. Some fans started wondering whether the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles shared a universe with another popular comic character, Daredevil, since they seemed to share some uncanny similarities. Both the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Daredevil started out as comics, the Turtles first appearing in 1984, while Daredevil made its first appearance 2 decades earlier in 1964. Both of these comics were turned into TV series, and then into feature-length movies. Furthermore, the Turtles and Daredevil were all trained in ninjutsu. Both series had dark overtones to it, and both were set in New York. Daredevil is trained by a blind sensei called Stick, while the Turtles are trained by Splinter. While the Turtles on occasion fight against a clan of evil ninjas called the Foot, Daredevil has to contend with enemies from a supervillain organization called the Hand, and before long, some fans started noticing these similarities and started speculating that the Turtles and Daredevil exist in the same universe, as unlikely as that may seem. It was later confirmed that the creators of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, purposefully added these details into the cartoon to pay homage to the Daredevil character. But they didn't stop there. In one issue of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic, a screen plays out in which a blind man walks out into the road and ends up in front of an oncoming truck that's carrying canisters of ooze. Matt Murdock, who would later become Daredevil, pushes the man out of the way but gets struck in the face by one of the canisters, and he later wakes up in the hospital having lost his sight. In the meantime, the ooze ends up in the sewers beneath the city and mutates Splinter and the Turtles. While both the origin stories in these comics have since been altered, there's no denying that they take place in the same universe, confirming what many fans have been suspecting for decades. Another cartoon that became hugely popular in the 90s was Captain Planet and the Planeteers, which features a crystal blue superhero who strives to eliminate all the pollution in the world. He employs the services of 5 children who become the Planeteers, each of whom receives a special ring that can summon him, and together they fight against an array of villains, all of whom need to be stopped before harming the planet. While it isn't known how Captain Planet came into existence, it's certain that he's been around for eons. In fact, he's friends with Gaia, the spirit of Earth, and at one point she hints at the fact that the children aren't the first people to wield the rings that she gave them. Each of the rings corresponds to a different element: earth, fire, wind, and water. However, the 5th ring represents heart. When the rings are combined, they summon Captain Planet, who's always able to save the day no matter how dire the consequences. One of the main villains that he and the Planeteers have to contend with is a humanoid rat called Verminous Scum. He loves nothing more than causing havoc through pollution and spreading diseases. He's also been known to turn humans into half-breed rat slaves, create acid rain that falls down on the planet, and he does everything in his power to get rid of Captain Planet. Not many people know that in the show's first season, Verminous Scum was voiced by none other than Jeff Goldblum. The first villain that we ever see in the show, though, is a pig-like man called Hoggish Greedley. The personification of overconsumption and greed, he uses his pig-themed polluting gadgets to further enrich himself, but always at the expense of the planet. There are several other villains that threaten Earth's existence, including Luton Plunder, Dr. Blight, and Argos Bleak, all of whom are repeatedly defeated by the Captain and his Planeteers, only to swear revenge upon fleeing in most instances. As for the Captain, he has his own set of superpowers, including transmutation, elemental manipulation, and the ability to help plants grow. He can also alter the weather at will, create electricity, teleport, and has the uncanny ability to sense imbalances in nearby environments. Together, they make a formidable team that saves the Earth over and over again. At the end of each episode, one of the Planeteers, or Captain Planet, would appear on screen to deliver a hopeful message or a warning about the environment, urging kids to be a part of the solution rather than the problem. The show left fans with many questions, such as where Captain Planet came from and how Gaia came into existence. This resulted in many fan theories being suggested, and one of those has been confirmed as accurate. It wasn't until 2 decades after the show was last aired that one of the main theories was confirmed by the creator, Barbara Pyle. She stated that Captain Planet doesn't actually exist and that he's merely a figment of the Planeteers' imaginations. He exists in their minds as the personification of teamwork, and so still helps them defeat their enemies, but isn't an actual superhero. Pyle later stated that she was surprised that fans of the show hadn't figured this out earlier. When it comes to science fiction shows, few have as big of a following as Star Trek. The show has been through many iterations, including The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and Discovery, to name but a few. This has resulted in fans constantly arguing over which series was the best, and which captain at the helm of the Enterprise was the more legendary, with most people leaning towards either Captain James T. Kirk or Jean-Luc Picard. The show is full of strange and wonderful characters from different alien species, some of which work for Starfleet, an organization that focuses on the exploration of deep space and the different cultures that can be found there. But while exploring different star systems and planets, they often encounter enemies, each of which has their own agenda and types of technology, such as the Borg, who exists as a hive mind of cybernetic organisms. They're one of the more formidable foes in the franchise, as they display no emotion and are always on the lookout for beings that can be assimilated into their collective consciousness by injecting them with nanoprobes and then adding cybernetic components to their bodies. The Ferengi are another of the better-known races of villains. They have only one goal in mind, to enrich themselves, and they regard anyone with money as a friend, as long as they aren't female, since they're seen as inferior, and in their culture are not allowed to accumulate wealth. The Gorn are a bipedal reptilian race that first was introduced to audiences in the original Star Trek series. They possess superior strength and technology similar to that of the Starfleet, and hence are seen as a formidable threat. Then there are the Cardassians. They make their first appearance in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and are revealed to have once been a race of highly intellectual people who were then forced to become militaristic when famine and disease ravished their people. This resulted in a military dictatorship being formed, which protected their citizens and helped them become prosperous, but they were also constantly under surveillance by the Obsidian Order. But one of the most frequent threats to the characters in Star Trek is a race called the Klingons, though this changed as the franchise grew, since they joined the Federation during Star Trek: The Next Generation. Best remembered for their cranial ridges, a set of bony plates that are situated on their foreheads, they're a race of warriors that take delight in battle. They also have a set of strict beliefs from which they refuse to waver, and coupled with their explosive and unpredictable personalities, make for a formidable foe. They're also the subject of a fan conspiracy theory that's since been confirmed in Star Trek Discovery. During the first season, Klingons didn't look that different from humans, since the show had a very limited budget. But as time went by and the show became more popular, their appearance was altered to include more cranial ridges, making these warriors look far more intimidating. But some people started to speculate that they'd undergone genetic modification. In Star Trek Enterprise, we learned that this is indeed the case. It's revealed that in 2154, a Klingon scientist decided to try and create a new superior version of Klingon. When this was done, one of the side effects was the loss of their cranial ridges. But then a disease called the Levodian flu breaks out, and the resulting antivirus causes any Klingon who receives it to also lose their ridges. As time went by, the antivirus had less of an effect, and eventually Klingon babies were once again born with their cranial ridges intact, confirming a long-standing fan theory. When the fantasy television series Game of Thrones was first aired in 2011, it took the world by storm. Viewers were enthralled by the massive landscapes, intertwining family dramas, and the battles that took place along with the unpredictable nature of the show. Based on the books written by George R.R. Martin, the show became famous for the fact that any character could lose their life at any moment, and immediately they were introduced to some very interesting characters, some of which were seen as good guys, while others were brutal and warmongering. Some people found it hard to keep up with all the characters, since there were many different families involved, some of which overlapped with others. But some characters seemed to have very little backstory, resulting in many fan theories being suggested. One such theory is known as R plus L equals J, and revolves around one of the more popular characters, a member of the Night's Watch called Jon Snow, who swears to protect the wall that separates them from outside threats. He joins the Watch early in the show, and later is elected as Lord Commander, but he isn't as popular with some of the characters in the show, who find his decision-making abilities questionable, such as the fact that he lets the Wildlings, a group that live on the other side of the wall, settle outside of the wall. Their distrust of Snow only grows, and eventually a mutiny breaks out, during which he loses his life, only to be resurrected by the Red Priestess, Melisandre, later on. Not much is known about Snow, despite him being one of the most popular characters, and soon fans started to speculate about his origins. This gave birth to the theory that became known as R plus L equals J, and before long it had attained legendary status, since it was seemingly the only one that fully explained where snow came from. The theory was first suggested back in 1997 on the Usenet site. A user called Roderick suggested that Snow was the son of two of the main characters, Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. They further suggested that Ned Stark, who loses his life very early on in the show, kept this a secret, since Robert Baratheon became obsessed with ending the Targaryen line and had a special hate for any of Rhaegar's descendants. In the series, it's said that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna after falling in love with her, and that this evoked the wrath in Baratheon. He then goes to war with the Targaryens, bringing about the clan's fall. However, it's also speculated that the couple merely eloped, and while giving birth to Jon Snow, she lost her life. Ned Stark was the last person to see her and made a promise to her, which remained a mystery. In the season 6 finale of the show, it was confirmed that Lyanna passed away during childbirth, and in the season 7 finale, this theory was finally fully confirmed, bringing to an end a fan theory about Jon Snow's parentage that's existed since the mid-1990s. Death Note is one of the most popular anime series ever created. The plot follows a young man called Light Yagami, who's grown disillusioned in the world thanks to all the crime and corruption that he's witnessed. One day he stumbles across a mysterious book that he finds lying on the ground and notices that it's called Death Note. But when he opens it, he finds nothing but blank pages, leaving him perplexed. But he soon learns that the true purpose of the book is that when the owner writes someone's name on its blank pages, they'll lose their life. At first, he doesn't believe the rumor to be true, but when he decides to experiment, he's shocked to learn that it is very real. He then meets a Shinigami, which is akin to a Grim Reaper, called Ryuk, and learns that he's the book's previous owner. Before long, Light realizes that he can use the book to create a better world, and he decides to create a new world order by getting rid of anyone who he deems to be evil. Unsurprisingly, this results in many people passing away without explanation, and a detective, known only as L, starts to investigate. He soon learns that the person responsible is living somewhere in Japan, and that they've been given the moniker Kira. When Light learns that L is after him, the two engage in a fascinating battle of wits. Following this, the plot becomes very complicated, as all the rules of the Death Note are revealed along with the fact that there is more than one. Eventually, Light decides to renounce his and another Death Note, and hands himself over to L, and together they work to expose the Yotsuba Company, which employs 8 people, each of whom has a Death Note that they use to make as much profit as possible. But he turns on L and orders another Shinigami called Rem to end his life, and Light then takes up L's old position in the task force. But suspicions are soon raised that Light is actually Kira, and he starts searching for a successor amongst Kira's supporters. He enlists Taro Mikami and a reporter called Kiyomi Takada, both of whom carry on writing the names of criminals in their books, but he later ends Kiyomi's life when she starts to realize that he's Kira. Eventually, Light's alter ego is exposed, and his life is ended by the original owner of the Death Note, Ryuk. The end of the series led to much speculation from fans who wondered what happened to Light after he lost his life. Some suggested that he merely faded into nothingness, while others believed there had to be more to the lore. One thing was certain though, anyone who uses a Death Note cannot gain entry into either heaven or hell, giving rise to theories that Light went to purgatory while he remained for all eternity. But some fans suggested that when he passed away, he became a Shinigami himself, but this theory was never confirmed. Then an OVA version of the series was released that seemed to give fans the answer that they were looking for. They noticed that it contained a Shinigami that looked eerily like Light, since he was wearing a similar coat and red tie around his forehead that resembled the tie worn by Light on his school uniform. Furthermore, he was seen walking with a limp, and seeing how Light was wounded in the leg before he passed away, they thought that it made sense that this was a reincarnated Light. While many fans feel the theory has been fully confirmed, others reject this idea, since the Shinigami was seen wearing goggles, and that theory contradicts some of the show's rules. When talking about conspiracy theories regarding TV shows, one would imagine that the last show to be mentioned would be the sitcom Seinfeld, which kept audiences glued to their screens for 9 seasons, from the late 1980s to the 1990s. The truth is, though, that it's spawned many such theories, one of which suggests that the hallway outside of Jerry Seinfeld, the main character's New York apartment, cannot exist. This theory has since been spoken about at length on the internet, with some users going as far as to create sketches of the apartment's kitchen and the hallway outside, showing that they would intersect and that the hallway therefore isn't real. Another discussion that is often found online is where Jerry's neighbor Kramer gets his money from, since he never has a job and is always taking food from Jerry's kitchen, and yet we know that he does indeed have money. It's been suggested that he was married at one point and got divorced right before the events that we see in the show. It also explains his views on marriage, which he describes as man-made prisons that are created to make men miserable. Fans suggest that he received a large amount of money in the divorce and hence no longer needs to work. It's also been theorized that he inherited a lot of money or that he's an excellent gambler, despite often complaining about how much money he's lost. It's also been theorized that the characters in the show were taken from the cartoon Peanuts, which features Charlie Brown. Fans have speculated that Jerry is Linus, Elaine is Lucy, George is Charlie Brown, and Kramer is Pigpen, since he has no qualms about getting his hands dirty, though this has never been proven. Then there's the theory that Jerry isn't really a very good stand-up comedian. His friends often allude to the fact that he reuses some of his older material, and in one instance, he states that he would be unable to perform an hour-long set at a middle school, suggesting that he either has no new material or is afraid of being booed off stage. One of the more prevailing theories, though, stems from season 7, when George becomes engaged to a woman called Susan Ross, played by Heidi Swedberg. In the show, Susan is an ambitious NBC executive who hails from a rich family. She and George date on and off again for a while, but eventually decide to get married. But their plans never come to fruition as tragedy strikes, much to his relief since he realizes that he doesn't really want to go through with the marriage. Susan, though, is none the wiser and continues to make wedding plans, which involves sending out invitations. She's seen licking the envelopes and placing the invitations inside, but then suddenly collapses, having ingested too much of the toxic glue used to seal them. George rushes her to the hospital, but to his strange relief, he's then informed by a doctor that she passed away, giving rise to a few fan conspiracy theories. Fans struggled to understand why the character would no longer appear in the show, and they started speculating that the decision may have had more to do with the actress than the show's plot. This was later confirmed by Jason Alexander, who played the role of George. He approached the show's writers and informed them that he found it impossible to work with Swedberg since they had no chemistry, an opinion shared by most of the rest of the cast. All of these actors did, though, state that they had nothing against her, but that they were just unable to sync with her during filming. She's since appeared in several other shows and has never encountered the same problem on any of those sets. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is a cartoon that needs no introduction to most people, especially those who spent a lot of time watching TV in the 1980s. The original series aired from 1983 to 1985 and introduced audiences for the first time to He-Man, the most powerful man in all the universe. His main enemy was a character called Skeletor, who sought to overthrow the kingdom of Eternia, but He-Man and his companions always managed to save the day somehow, whether by brute force, magic, or weapons. But not many people know that Skeletor doesn't belong in the same reality as He-Man and his friends. He originally hailed from a different dimension, but was transported to Eternia during the Great Wars when a dimensional wall was damaged. His main purpose in the show is to reopen this rift, allowing his cronies to enter the realm of Eternia, and his hope is that when this happens, they'll be able to overthrow the powers that be. The show saw a resurrection in the form of a reimagining in 2021, which saw new storylines being developed alongside the characters that we've come to know so well, and it's given rise to a fan theory that has since been confirmed. It concerns one of the other villains in the show, Hordak. He's the leader of the Evil Horde, which is an army of demon warriors and Skeletor's mentor. According to the show's lore, Skeletor betrayed Hordak, sending him to another dimension before being transported to Eternia. But Hordak found a way to travel to Eternia, and there he swears to take the reins of Eternia before Skeletor can. He's also the main antagonist to She-Ra, He-Man's twin sister, and in the series called She-Ra, Princess of Power, he rules over the planet Etheria. While seeking vengeance on Skeletor, he also fights against He-Man and his friends in a bid to destroy Castle Grayskull, which is where He-Man lives alongside the Sorceress and the spirit of Grayskull. Hordak's history was revealed in more detail in the Masters of the Universe Revolution No. 2 comic, which serves as a prequel to the 2021 and 2022 He-Man and the Masters of the Universe series that was released on Netflix. It's here that a popular fan theory was finally confirmed, much to the delight of the show's fans. It all started with the She-Ra Princess of Power series, where viewers were first introduced to a character called Horde Prime, who serves as Hordak's master. Fans noticed that Hordak and Horde Prime bore some similarities, and before long they started speculating that the two characters may be related. This theory only grew when Mattel released a Horde Prime action figure in 2012, which fans noticed looked a lot like Hordak. The theory was finally confirmed in the comic when Hordak and Keldor, who would later become Skeletor, are engaged in a fight. It's here that it was finally revealed that Hordak and Horde Prime are brothers, bringing the mystery to a long-awaited close. Reality TV shows are often the subject of fan conspiracy theories, many of which have been confirmed as true throughout the years, and very often not in a good way. The shows are often faked and scripted while creating the impression that the opposite is true. For example, a show called Storage Wars became very popular during the 2010s, and surprisingly it's still being aired today, despite a scandal that erupted in 2012. The premise of the show is a simple one. Potential buyers gather outside a set of storage lockers that have been abandoned by their owners, and they bid on each locker in hopes of finding something valuable inside. There are some rules though. No one is allowed to step foot inside the lockers or handle any of the items inside. Bidders are allowed to look inside the lockers from the open door, but are blissfully unaware of what they're bidding on. In some instances, after submitting a winning bid, they're pleased to find valuable items that are usually resold from their pawn shops. But sometimes the lockers contain nothing but trash, resulting in the bidder potentially losing a lot of money. Viewers found the show engaging, since they found out what was hidden in the lockers when the winning bidders started unpacking it. And soon they became acquainted with different regular bidders: Dave Hester, Daryl Sheets, Jared Schultz, and Brandy Passante, among others. Then, in 2012, the show received a lot of criticism when Dave Hester, also known as the Yup Man, accused the show's producers of rigging the lockers. He stated that they often placed valuable items in the lockers to drum up more drama from the viewers at home, and this was a conspiracy theory that had been growing over the last couple seasons of the show. This resulted in a legal battle that was later settled amicably, but the show's reputation had been damaged beyond repair, and many viewers never returned. But the conspiracy theory was confirmed. Emma Stone is an American actress, known for her unique husky voice, charm, and adaptability. She's won a variety of awards, two of which were the Oscars for Best Actor. Despite being a neutral individual with no hidden agendas, Emma found herself at the center of one conspiracy theory. It was a Sunday evening on the 26th of February back in 2017. The Dolby Theater was full of an audience of celebrities. Emma had just won her Best Actress award for her role in the film La La Land. A few more awards were announced after, and the night moved on to its final awarding ceremony. It was for the Best Picture award. On stage, the hosts held out a red envelope with the name of the winning film. They announced that it was La La Land. As the producers were forced on stage, a woman came rushing out with a headset adorning her face. The crowd heard the word Moonlight, a different film that was among the nominees. The audience thought that perhaps both of the films won Best Picture and had to share the title. But that was not the case. It was soon figured out that the wrong name had been spoken, and that the card was in fact Emma Stone's from when she was awarded Best Actor. Moonlight had their chance on stage once the fault had been corrected, but rumors began to circulate about the strange mishap. The theories placed Emma at the center, believing that this was a calculated act on her part. After she had won, she retrieved the winning envelope from Leonardo DiCaprio backstage. It was suggested that she intentionally left it there, and the next presenter picked it up. Her sinister plot was to ensure that La La Land won, or was at least mentioned a second time. Others suggested that perhaps it was all just one big accident, and she could have left it behind by accident, which is probably not a likely scenario. Before the theories even caught wind, after the ceremony, Emma Stone headed to the reporters. Eyes were on her as the culprit, and she knew it. In an effort to clear her name, the winning actress stated that she'd been holding her card the entire time since she had retrieved it from DiCaprio. She claimed to have no idea how this mistake could have happened. What many were unaware of at the time was that during such ceremonies, 2 winning cards for each award were made. One of them is given to the presenter, and the other is placed into a bag. It's likely that the second copy was mistakenly handed to the next award presenter. Theorists, however, maintained that this wasn't any old mishap, but a calculated event. If it wasn't Emma Stone behind the mistake, then it must have been someone else, according to them. Luckily for her, she wasn't the only one who faced such accusations. The next person under fire for this error was Leonardo DiCaprio, who announced Emma's award. Many believe that he was the one to blame, and that it was actually him who left the card backstage where the next presenter would mistakenly pick it up. The motive in this case was personal revenge against the Academy for making him wait so many years to win his first Oscar. An alternative possibility was Ben Affleck, who, according to the theorists' logic, sought to derail the Oscars as well as injure the PWC's business. This was all in search of revenge for the Academy shutting his 2016 movie, The Accountant, out of the nominations given its unethical backdrop. The last entity that would face the theorists was the Academy itself. The Oscar TV ratings had seen a decline in recent years, and the 2017 show was no different. The Sunday broadcast barely beat the number of viewers from 2008, which saw a record low audience of 32 million viewers. This prompted Twitter users and theorists to conclude that the Academy purposefully orchestrated this mistake in an effort to boost ratings. There's no doubt that Australian actress Margot Robbie is a scene-stealing magnet. She's admired for her charm and the variety of roles that she adapts to. Margot is most known for her appearance in the recent Barbie movie, but also found herself playing the unstable character of Harley Quinn. She starred in a few films, but according to this conspiracy theory, there may be a whole lot more. Theorists and fans believe that Margot and another celebrity are the same person. Emma Mackey is a French-British actress. She's revered for her role in Emily and the Winter Lake. She also has appeared in a number of television series. But due to the similarities between these two praised actresses, some believe that they're really the same person. The physical resemblance is uncanny. Both women share the same facial structure, including eye shape, lips, nose, and hairline. They even share the same laugh lines. Side-by-side images serve as a clear-cut example of the resemblance that theorists are referring to. Despite minor differences such as a chin shape and eye color, many maintain that they're the same person. Either Margot Robbie is becoming Emma Mackey or the other way around. But theorists have provided no motive behind this cunning ruse. Perhaps the goal is to see how long she can dupe the public. Fans aren't the only ones behind this conspiracy theory, though. In some instances, both stars have been mistaken for one another by paparazzi when they're out in public. Emma was even cast in the Barbie movie alongside Margot as physicist Barbie, given their physical similarities. The actresses, though, don't seem too pleased about the whole theory. Emma preferred that everyone get over the supposed comparisons, and told the news outlet, The Independent, that she doesn't see the resemblance at all. In fact, she prefers that everyone focuses on the jobs that each individual woman is doing rather than how similar they are. Margot revealed that while out in public, a stranger approached her while she was eating a burger. They told her that they enjoyed her role in a series that she never even starred in. The fan was confusing her for Emma, which Margot quickly cleared up. Despite the denial from both parties, we've yet to see the two in the same room together. Further adding complications to debunking this theory was when an interviewer informed Margot that she and Emma were the center of an online conspiracy. Her response held no shock at all, and she laughed instead. The interviewer also pointed out that in one of her films she speaks French, and Emma happens to be French as well. This couldn't have been just a coincidence, according to theorists, but rather evidence proving that they are the same person. Both actresses now seem somewhat in on the whole joke and appear entirely unruffled by the theory, which only prompts theorists to maintain that they are the same person. Anne Hathaway's relationship with Adam Schulman is one of the most long-lasting and successful marriages in celebrity history. Anne is another respected actress who's held in high regard. She starred in some higher-rated movies, such as Ocean's 8, Dark Waters, The Princess Diaries, and several other films. Adam is an actor and producer known for Seesaw Monster, Song 1, and The Shower. The couple met in 2008, got together, had children, and wedded in 2012. Adam and Ann have been together for quite a few years, or perhaps a bit longer than that, according to this conspiracy theory. Both celebrities were able to evade such theories until now, when fans posited that Adam is a reincarnation of the playwright and poet William Shakespeare. The theory was first set afloat on Twitter in 2018, when one user posted images of Adam next to Shakespeare. The caption read, "Anne Hathaway is being talked about for her beauty, but what about the fact that her husband looks like William Shakespeare?" The men do share a striking resemblance, to the point that Adam could very well be a descendant of the late poet. While this may sound like the most ludicrous conspiracy yet, the idea piqued the interest of more than 438,000 Twitter users. The actor seems to share the same facial features as Shakespeare, including a distinctive nose and facial structure. But this isn't the most bizarre aspect of the conspiracy theory. In a shocking coincidence, the name of William Shakespeare's wife was Anne Hathaway. The 1500s couple married in 1582 when she was 18 years old. They went on to have 3 children together, just one more than the modern-day Anne and her Shakespeare lookalike husband. The theory took social media by storm, with another Twitter user claiming that the 1500s couple were so in love that they came back for each other. The conspiracy, though, didn't end there, and others were derived from it. Fans posited further that both celebrities were reincarnated. Jasmine Shah suggested that Shakespeare had made a deal with his wife in which she would be famous in the next life, referring to modern-day Anne Hathaway being more famous than her husband. Others suggested that this was an act of time travel or even vampirism. Many pointed out that Anne doesn't seem to age at all and still looks young despite being over 40 years old. The British royal family has an inconceivable amount of conspiracy theories about them in circulation. It was only a matter of time before Kate Middleton found herself at the center of some of them. With the addition of social media, no one is safe from the outlandish ideas of the masses, not even the royal family, who find themselves littered across various social media platforms. In 2022, she and Prince William became the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall. In January of this year, the princess disappeared from the public eye. It was announced that she had undergone surgery and was recovering at home, but that she would not be able to return to her duties until after Easter. People across the globe, though, couldn't understand why no image of her was released to the public, and why no one had seen her since the hospital visit. And so, in the gossip lounges of the internet, rumors sparked. Social media users theorized that she'd been placed in a medically induced coma as a result of a complication with the surgery. This theory jumped into gear after a Spanish TV host claimed that she'd heard this information from an anonymous source within the royal family. The palace pushed against this outlandish claim, referring to it as absolute nonsense. The theories soon got way out of hand, with many alleging that she was deceased. Others suggested that William was the cause of her hospital visit, citing his bad temper as evidence. Twitter users whispered of a secret pregnancy, a troubled marriage, and domestic violence. Concerns for the whereabouts of Kate rose on Reddit as well. Some suggested that she'd been recovering from some sort of cosmetic surgery, or that she'd been given an unflattering haircut and was waiting for it to grow out. The various ideas about her whereabouts grew wild, with social media users even suggesting that she had escaped the confines of the palace and had run away. A few months later, though, the princess emerged, and no one was convinced it was really her. Soon, a new theory came into play: the body double theory. Theorists claimed that the person who emerged from the palace wasn't the missing princess, but rather a body double. Kate's footage emerged online, and one amateur sleuth took it into his own hands to uncover the alleged truth. The truth, of course, was actually the theory that this was a paid and well-known professional impersonator. But there was absolutely no evidence suggesting that this was the case, and it was among the many false rumors that were hyped up by social media users. The body double claim soon racked up over 12 million views on Twitter and over 11 million on TikTok. In a sad turn of events, it was revealed that Kate Middleton had been diagnosed with cancer. But even with this heartbreaking revelation, the conspiracy theorists pressed on. They then switched to accusing the princess of not really having cancer, and that the doctors had only found precancerous cells in her system. Self-proclaimed social media doctors alleged that she'd faked the details of the disease, but to what gain? It comes as no surprise that Princess of Pop Britney Spears is at the center of a wide variety of conspiracy theories. Her career began at the age of just 2 years old when she competed in talent shows. At the age of 8, she was auditioning to be in a Mickey Mouse television show. She would soon begin appearing in Broadway plays, and not long after that started producing songs. Her transcendence to fame was set in stone from there. Justin Timberlake, the American singer, songwriter, actor, and producer, was thrown into the mix along with Britney in this outlandish conspiracy theory that took social media by storm. The theory instilled shock in fans across the world once they got word of it. Britney and Timberlake had been involved in a fatal car wreck. The theory came about when a pair of San Jose-based DJs, Kramer and Twitch, reported on the Extreme Nighttime radio show that the two had been involved in a car wreck that left Britney deceased and Timberlake in a coma. Despite having not aired on legitimate news outlets, the rumors spread throughout the nation, morphing into an internet conspiracy theory. This report triggered numerous panicked phone calls to be made to Los Angeles authorities. Chat rooms and fan sites began to buzz with reports of how the accident had happened. Apparently, the celebrities had been heading down a Los Angeles freeway, traveling at more than 100 miles per hour, when they seemingly crashed, ending Britney's life with the supposed empty flask that was found near the wreckage. A spokesman for the LA Police Department revealed that fire officials, the police, and local hospitals spent the evening answering phone calls from distraught fans and reporters. The two DJs who initiated the rumor are known for their poor behavior, and have even been fined for using expletives and suspended for suggesting that motorists run over cyclists. 2 days after the supposed accident, the couple were seen very much alive. The crash had never taken place. In fact, the two weren't even near each other that evening. Britney had been working on her new album and was in great health in LA, while Timberlake was out touring with his band in Philadelphia. Once Timberlake had gotten word of this wild conspiracy theory, he called Britney to find out what had happened. The two had gotten word of the theory at the same time. While both celebrities routinely deal with fans and attention given their careers, they were still upset by this outlandish rumor, which had also affected their families. Timberlake had 6 phone calls made to him from different family members who were concerned for his well-being. Social media users had begun settling down, but some still asked if the accident was true on various social media platforms, including Reddit. The story of the crash was entirely made up, and the 2 disc jockeys have since been fired from the show. The conspiracy theories, though, didn't end there and only instilled new ones. Fans began to suggest that the accident had happened, but that Timberlake wasn't in the car. They claimed that Britney did lose her life and was replaced by an artificially intelligent clone, and referred to images of the star on her wedding day. An Instagram page called Britney Is Not Free, which is in reference to the Free Britney movement, shared a video in which AI was used to enhance the image of the singer on her wedding day. The original image was blurry, but featured the star wearing her wedding dress and smiling. The AI photo generator adapted the image to make it clear, leaving fans divided as to whether or not it really is her or if it's an artificial intelligence clone. They explained that her eye color was wrong and that she had a different nose and teeth. There was no convincing fans that this was the real Britney. While some maintained that this was a robotic clone, others suggested that this was a human clone or a body double. TikTok users alleged that Britney's body shape altered between posts in reference to her Instagram clips where she's seen singing and dancing. Concerned fans have also pointed out that her wrist tattoo seems to change in each clip. While many accepted the idea that she was replaced following the rumored car wreck, others thought that the swap might have come the previous year when the singer deactivated her Instagram account. Britney had spoken of the traumatizing effects that social media could have, and subsequently deactivated the account, but she reactivated it sometime later. But there was a clear change in her presentation. The captions on her posts became shorter, prompting some to believe that she wasn't the one in control of it anymore, and nor was she in control of herself. The existence of the Illuminati can be traced back to the 15th century. It referred to an organization or group that claimed to be unusually enlightened. Despite being a vastly different group of people in historical times, modern-day descriptions depict them as a shadowy society and accuse them of controlling the world, taking on more of a cult-like impression. Various high-up figures are rumored to be part of the Illuminati, and the group is running world politics and government-related aspects. Conspiracy theories involving the elite have been in circulation for ages. Numerous celebrities have found themselves at the center of such suggestions, ranging from Illuminati initiations to being co-leaders of the modern organization. Theorists have developed a list of stars who they believe are in the shadowy organization, and refer to them as A-list members, citing supposed evidence in songs and online images. Beyoncé and her partner Jay-Z found themselves at the top of the list of supposed leaders of this society. Theorists point to hand symbols in some of Beyoncé's music videos, and if she's the queen of the Illuminati, that makes Jay-Z the king. He was rumored to be involved in society ever since he held up his Rock Nation hand sign, with his flat palm and made a triangular hand shape. The rumors pressed on despite him denying the allegations on the Rick Ross track called Freemason. In 2014, Madonna released a song named after the 17th century organization on an album called Rebel Heart. Many believed that the lyrics to the song revealed her involvement in the society, as well as its modern-day existence. The singer later clarified that she was referring to the earlier meaning of the word, which was enlightened. Whether this was her intention or not, the word was dropped much too casually and certainly attracted unwanted attention. Unsurprisingly, Katy Perry finds herself on the list as well. Proof can be found in her music video for Dark Horse. It included the Eye of Horus, a clear reference to the all-seeing eye, an alleged symbol of the Illuminati. Her 2014 Grammy Awards performance also made use of occult symbolism, which prompted further accusations. One accusation was made by the radio personality Alex Jones, who claimed that she was an Illuminati priestess who was conducting witchcraft rituals before live audiences. Will Smith's assault on Chris Rock was viewed as an initiation ritual by many conspiracy theorists, placing both celebrities in the Illuminati. Kesha also made various symbolic references to the society, with the cult symbols and the all-seeing eye. Adding fuel to the fire is the eye tattoo that she has on her hand, and the fact that she admitted to being an Illuminati leader in an interview with Rolling Stone. Another alleged A-list member was Michael Jackson. Some believe that he revealed too much inside information, forcing the secret society to end his life. Rihanna also appears to meet all the criteria that placed her in the infamous group, including holding her hand over one eye on the cover of Rated R and using pyramid-shaped hand symbols in her music videos. She's been called the Princess of the Illuminati, which even appeared on one of her videos. Eminem was unable to evade the list too, and one way to get into society supposedly is to make a pact with Satan. Eminem allegedly sold his soul to the organization in exchange for fame and talent. Among the Illuminati A-list are the most successful celebrities of the modern day, whose work is often discredited and attributed to their involvement in a society that leading conspiracy theorists believe controls the world. John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States. It was this president who faced various foreign crises, but also managed to secure achievements such as the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and the Alliance for Progress. In 1963, while riding in a motorcade in Dallas through a crowd of onlookers, he was assassinated. His passing caused a worldwide shock. The heartbreak that was felt across the globe, though, did not deter conspiracy theorists. Kennedy found himself at the center of a rather unique idea. It posited that the president didn't really meet his end in Dallas. Theorists don't discount the fact that he was assassinated, but they do rule out that he succumbed to his injuries. According to them, Kennedy sustained a severe head wound and was shipped to a secret nursing home where he would live out the remainder of his days. Some suggest that this alleged private nursing home is in South America, New York, or Canada. Oddly, this same theory was applied to Elvis Presley upon his passing. It was alleged that he was sent to the same nursing home as the president and even shared a room with him. Skeptics argue against this by presenting the exact extent of the injury that Kennedy sustained that fateful day. This only prompted theorists to find an alternative, this time suggesting a clone. The man who rode in the motorcade was not President John F. Kennedy, but rather someone who looked just like him. This was all a planned act controlled by Lyndon B. Johnson. Kennedy, according to the theory, was diagnosed with an incurable disease and needed to be taken out of the spotlight and placed in a secret nursing home. The CIA therefore staged the assassination under the command of Johnson, the 36th President of the United States. Strangely, in support of this theory is that just 1 hour and 39 minutes later, Johnson was sworn in as president. Other conspiracy theories revolving around the assassination pointed to a mob hit. According to theories, the Kennedy family were not strangers to organized crime, and suggested that the mafia had even helped JFK steal the 1960 elections by securing votes in the state of Illinois. The theory that the mob was involved in the assassination hinged on the fact that the president had failed to overthrow Fidel Castro. This meant that the mafia-run casinos were still shut down, and brother Robert Kennedy was cracking down on the mob by pursuing Jimmy Hoffa. According to a biographer, Robert even feared that he was the one who got his brother assassinated. The theory posits that his attempts to prosecute the mob backfired in a terrible way and landed on JFK. A more frightening suggestion placed the government at the center of it. The theory that the assassination was an inside job began to do the rounds, and according to a different biographer, Robert's suspicions fell on a rogue element within the CIA. The Central Intelligence Agency has various conspiracy theories attached to their name, so it comes as no surprise that they were blamed for the assassination. Another outlandish theory pointed the finger at Ted Cruz's father, and it was found out he was known to associate with Lee Harvey Oswald, and the two had been together prior to Oswald's assassination. The previously unsealed documents are making their way into the public eye, with the NARA processing the withheld records of the JFK incident. We may finally be able to put some of these conspiracy theories to rest and find out what really happened that fateful day. Suri Cruise is the daughter of actress Katie Holmes and actor Tom Cruise. Following in her parents' footsteps, she became a young actress, starring in films such as Alone Together and Rare Objects. Ever since her birth in 2006, Suri's had the spotlight on her, and even her very first conspiracy theory. Many believed that she wasn't real, doubting her existence. The theories came after the post-pregnancy secrecy, but after the release of the first family photos, the internet was plagued with otherworldly rumors. Even today, Suri Cruise, who's now 18 years old, finds herself being looked at with intrigue and raised eyebrows, with some believing that she's an alien. Theorists point to her supposed alien appearance and her parents' penchant for doing and saying pretty odd things. Rumors of her extraterrestrial origins were in circulation prior to her birth. This was because of her father's connection to Scientology. Some believe that he and other Scientologists had made contracts with extraterrestrials, which resulted in the conception of Suri. Her calm, collected, and intelligent demeanor also paints her as a being who's not from this world. According to some, her striking eyes and appearance are consistent with those of an alien life force. Theorists also reference her advanced vocabulary and her composure amidst the chaos. Adding support to the alien origin claim is Tom Cruise's obsession with security for his daughter, especially when she was younger. There was even a conspiracy in circulation that a body double or even a clone was being used to ensure that the real Suri was safe, which only fueled the idea that she wasn't a human being, but was of extraterrestrial origins. Many believe that the use of a body double is to ensure her safety and hide her true origins, but aside from the mention of a supposed body double, an obsessive father, her striking appearance, and unique intelligence, theorists don't have much supporting evidence for the claim. David Bowie was a British singer-songwriter and actor who rose to prominence in the 1970s. He served as a transitional figure in rock history. He gave us the famous songs Under Pressure, Starman, Life on Mars, and Ashes to Ashes. Bowie also predicted the coming of Kanye West. At least, this is what conspiracy theorists believe. The music industry is filled to the brim with crazy coincidences, the Illuminati, and purported cover-ups. Bowie seemed to evade all of this, but was deemed a psychic instead. The theory was traced back to 2007 when a blog emerged online. It aimed to reveal a conspiracy that ties Bowie and American rapper Kanye West together. The theory posits that Bowie predicted the birth of West and prophesied him as a musical messiah. The evidence, of course, can be found on the cover of the fifth studio album, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust, and The Spiders from Mars. The evidence becomes immediately clear, with the sign overhead that clearly reads K West. While this may be nothing more than a coincidence, theorists believe that it's strange nonetheless, and is a clear indicator that the theory may be legitimate. Taking it one step further is the opening track of this album, titled 5 Years. 5 years after the track was released, West was born. The theory doesn't stop there either. 2 years following the release of the album in 1974, Bowie was interviewed by the Rolling Stone. In the interview, he states that as soon as Ziggy's life ends on stage, the infinite takes the elements and makes themselves visible. Fans believe that this statement was a nod to Kanye West. Upon the singer's passing, West became one of the first people to share his condolences publicly. Some have also credited the final studio album as further evidence, suggesting that it refers to the rapper. Despite this stretch, they then point to another track. This time it appears third on the list. It was titled Lazarus, and the song centers around a biblical character that was brought back to life by Jesus. Years later, West gave us Yeezus. This conspiracy essentially suggests that Bowie knew that West would one day exist, and even rise to fame, and decided to refer to this prophecy through songs and album covers. Aside from these mere coincidences, though, there's not much to support the claims in the form of concrete proof. Stephen King is the famed American novelist and short story writer. His books revived horror fiction in the later 20th century. King was known for his blend of horror, science fiction, and the macabre. His books were so popular that they were almost guaranteed to be adapted into films or television series. Serving as a stark contrast against the famed author is John Lennon, the British musician. He was the co-leader of the revolutionary rock group The Beatles. It comes as no surprise that Lennon finds himself embedded in yet another conspiracy theory, given the circumstances and mystery surrounding his untimely passing. But what does the Reverend novelist have to do with the passing of a British musician with whom he supposedly had no relation? Well, in 1980, Lennon was fatally wounded outside of his New York City home. A man named Mark David Chapman confessed at the scene because he wanted the fame so badly that he was willing to give anything to get it, including taking the life of another man. Despite this confession, though, many fans weren't convinced that Chapman was the man behind the crime. Rumors sprouted from every corner of every platform about the fatality. Many have suggested that the CIA brainwashed Chapman in an effort to conceal who the perpetrator was. The theorists spun the wheel of possible suspects, and it landed on King. Could this horror writer's books become a reality with this ludicrous conspiracy theory? The conspiracy that King took Lennon's life first appeared in 2013 and was found in an unlikely source, the New York Magazine. The magazine claimed that by the order of Richard Nixon, the 37th President of the United States, and Ronald Reagan, the 40th President, Lennon was assassinated. It was alleged that these two presidents had been communicating with the writer through magazines. In 1999, King was run over by a vehicle, which theorists believe was somehow all part of the cover-up. Doubters, though, found no evidence as to why the magazine would make such an outlandish claim about the novelist, and required some more information. Theorists pointed out that King and Chapman shared a striking resemblance at the time, and the perpetrator just stood at the scene waiting to be picked up, knowing that nothing serious was going to happen to him. But what motive would Reagan and Nixon have for wanting Lennon assassinated in the first place? It turns out, according to theorists, that they wanted him and his pro-peace politics out of the way. Apparently, the presidents used encoded magazine articles to egg him on. Examples of such articles, though, are scarce. The flimsy conspiracy also worked out King's motive for wanting to take the musician's life, and it relates to both the Shining novel and a lyric that comes from one of Lennon's songs. Lennon's song was Instant Karma, and in The Shining, one of the lyrics of the song makes its way into the scramble of words almost hidden. It suggested that the writer feared retribution and opted to defend his career in a way that was urged by the voices of the US presidents. This odd conspiracy isn't just one that found itself rumored across social media, but was also one of the few that found physical manifestation. It took the form of an ominous yellow vehicle that drove around littered with words relating to the conspiracy, including the phrase Nixon, Reagan, Stephen King conspiracy. It also urged King to repent and that he should be jailed for the homicide of Lennon. In the early 90s, the driver appeared outside a local bookstore in Portland, where an autograph session was underway. The man had various sandwich boards that depicted supposed proof that the novelist had fatally wounded the musician in an effort to convince everyone that Stephen King ended the life of John Lennon. 1989 was a year that belonged to the German-French pop duo Milli Vanilli, consisting of members Rob and Fab. They quickly stormed through the European charts with the song Girl You Know It's True. It hit the United States with a stratospheric strike. The duo's debut album sold well over 8 million copies and remained in the top 10 for the remainder of the year. Fab was born in Paris and moved to Germany when he was 18. Rob was born in Germany and was not just a singer but also a performer, actor, and model. The 80s was also the time of MTV, and with the launch of the Club MTV tour in 1989, Milli Vanilli landed their first interview. During the interview, the executive Beth McCarthy Miller commented on the English language skills that the two possessed. Doubts were stirred among those who were present as to whether it really was Rob and Fab singing on their records. It didn't take long for the heartthrobs' skyrocketing fame to be eclipsed by conspiracies about their singing. For the next few months, rumors and controversy swirled in the music industry among those involved in the 1989 MTV tour. The tour carried over into July, with the duo at the prime of their career performing at Lake Compounce in Bristol, Connecticut. It was a few months after doubt was instilled in the truth behind the pair singing, when they began their onstage performance. The crowd was packed, and the concert was broadcast on MTV, increasing visibility. In the middle of the performance, there was an error in the form of a technical malfunction. This malfunction ultimately revealed the truth behind shadowy rumors and ludicrous conspiracy theories. Skips, jumps, and repeats in the soundtrack revealed that Milli Vanilli were not the ones singing. It was a revelation that not only significantly damaged the reputation of Rob and Fab, but also confirmed the theories and revealed the conspiracy lip-sync scandal. As we've come to know in the era of social media, live performances of our favorite celebrities are often done through lip-syncing. But in the case of Milli Vanilli, it went beyond just live stage performances. 6 months after the Lake Compounce critical error, the two singers began to place pressure on Varian, their producer. The pressure inevitably pushed Varian to expose the truth behind the singers. The two wanted to be the ones singing on their own records, which means that they hadn't been the ones singing. Varian publicly alleged that the two had never sung any of their own songs, but the records were supposedly being performed by different musicians, with Rob and Fab serving as nothing more than a pretty boy front. The scandal didn't go without legal consequences. By this time, Milli Vanilli had already won a Grammy Award, which they had to give up with their name becoming synonymous with lip-syncing. Once the scandal was revealed, the real voices of the duo came out. The vocalists were Brad Howell and John Davis, who were then featured on the cover of the real Milli Vanilli album. This album aimed to rectify the deceit and credit the real singers, but the damage had been done. What started as nothing more than a suspicion in the eyes of an executive grew into a rumor before becoming a theory and eventually a truth. The hard-edged Rolling Stones rock band owes much of its success to the British musician Keith Richards. Richards is not only a guitarist but also a songwriter. His playing style is heavily influenced by early American blues such as Robert Johnson and the rock and roll pioneer Chuck Berry. While he played many lead lines, Richards served mostly as the Rolling Stones guitarist, who preferred weaving his rhythms with the second guitarist. This is also a blues-inspired technique that Chicago musicians developed. The Rolling Stones had no doubt sustained the most consistent activity and worldwide popularity. They've also maintained the most durable partnership with the nucleus of singer Mick Jagger and drummer Charlie Watts and the famed guitarist Richards. He, like many in the entertainment industry, had his encounter with narcotics, which threatened to overshadow his career at times. He also served prison time for possession after police raided his estate. This musician is most noted for songs such as Paint It Black, Gimme Shelter, Beast of Burdens, Wild Horses, and You Can't Always Get What You Want. Richards had been unsuccessful in trying to evade the world of conspiracies, but strangely enough, one of the theories about him is surprisingly true. fans alleged that the musician doesn't sleep and is just far too busy making music. While this rumor isn't 100% accurate, there is a sliver of truth to it. In his autobiography and an interview, Richards revealed that he had gone many days without sleep. His autobiography spoke of a 5-day no-sleep session during the recording of the 1978 release Before They Make Me Run. For 5 whole days, the musician had gone sleepless. During the session, multiple engineers were tagged in and out. When one would flop under the desk for a snooze, another would be brought in so that the session could keep going. While this may sound like a record-breaking time without sleep, he almost doubled it in a separate incident. This time, he had gone 9 days without a wink, which didn't come without injury. In 1992, Richards told an interviewer that adrenaline is the best thing we have. He explained that during his 9-day no-sleep session, while placing a cassette back on the shelf, he had turned around and fallen right to sleep. He collapsed and banged his head on the edge of a speaker and woke up in a pool of his own vital fluid. Luckily, there was no permanent damage following this ordeal, but it did confirm the rumor that he didn't sleep to some degree. This terrifying stint, though, does remind us of the Russian sleep experiments, which Richards was just partaking in during his spare time. Billy Joel is a name that often goes along with anything music-related. He's a famous American singer, pianist, and songwriter. His favorite hit songs during the 70s and 80s forced him to endure being a worldwide favorite. Piano Man from the 1973 album of the same name became his signature song. Joel won Grammy Awards for Song of the Year and Record of the Year for Just the Way You Are. Other successful albums include Street Life Serenade, The Stranger, and 52nd Street. He would later top the musical charts with Uptown Girl, as well as We Didn't Start the Fire. Billy Joel's song sales topped $100 million, and he was soon inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Several years later, he received the Kennedy Center honors. Amazingly, Joel was able to evade the world of conspiracy theories. He isn't involved in the Illuminati, nor does he have any hidden agendas. He hasn't sold his soul to Satan, and he certainly isn't a clone. But odd fan theories do occasionally circulate regarding his music, and only one rumor in circulation placed the musician in a positive light. This odd theory took the form of a meme that did the rounds on social media. Rumors posited that Billy Joel didn't sell front-row tickets to his shows, but rather gave them away to fans who bought cheaper tickets. Many wondered if there was any truth to this random meme, since it's not a reliable source of information. It almost seemed too good to be true, even for Joel. Incredibly, this rumor is completely true, and the reason behind it only boosts the musician's image. In a 2014 interview with Billboard, Joel confirmed the rumor. The singer-songwriter is known for exclusively playing concerts in Manhattan at the 20,000-seat Madison Square Garden. He's performed a show there at least once a month since 2014. But when he's not performing at the arena, he's on stage at sold-out stadiums across the globe. He's performed in cities like Los Angeles, Dublin, London, Miami, and Melbourne, with each show making millions. In the interview, Joel explained that 25 years prior, he looked down at the crowd of big shots who had paid way too much money to be in the front row. He seemed to notice that these front row fans were not cheering or making noise. They sat there with gold chains dangling from their necks, puffing on cigars, looking up at Joel as if to say, "Entertain me, Piano Man." According to him, these supposed fans would never even stand up. The noise of excitement and applause was coming from right at the back of the room from the cheaper seats. Joel was looking for the real fans in the crowd, so he decided then and there to leave the first few rows unsold. Then, as people are being ushered in and allowed to their seats, he sends out crew members all the way to the back to find the enthusiastic ticket holders. These are the real fans who get free front row ticket upgrades and are shown to their new seats right before their favorite musician. Joel enjoys seeing their genuine happy reactions during his performances and doesn't mind losing the money because seeing real fans is priceless. Singer-songwriter Kesha was born in Los Angeles, California. She found her big break during a cameo with rapper Flo Rida in the 2009 hit Right Round. She soon landed a record contract with RCA and released her first single that same year called TikTok. This party anthem found itself a quick following, projecting Kesha to fame. In 2010, her debut album Animal reached the top of the charts. The singer was exposed to the music industry at an early age through her mother, who was a songwriter and encouraged her daughter's interest in singing. Kesha's mother even allowed her to work on some of her song demos. Later, the aspiring celebrity would attend music school and found inspiration in Johnny Cash and Patsy Cline. When she was 17 years old, the singer left school and embarked on her music career. But with fame, there also comes a world of conspiracy and rumors. One rumor concerning Kesha was that she had broken into another celebrity's home. The theory stated that she had once broken into Prince's house when she was just starting out in her music career. Kesha appeared on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon in 2014 and revealed that the rumor had been taken to social media and was entirely true. But it wasn't really that much of a break-in, but more of a trespassing situation. In a bold move, the singer snuck into Prince's home, and according to her, it was incredibly easy to accomplish. She arrived in front of the house in her late grandfather's car. She got out and noticed a gardener working in the front yard. Kesha alleged that she handed him a $5 bill and told him not to say anything. She slid under the gate while the gardener supposedly stood there laughing. She made her way up to the mountain and arrived at the front door, which was unlocked. She allegedly took this as an open invitation and made her way inside. The whole house was purple velvet, which confirmed another theory regarding Prince's home. The aspiring singer made her way to the elevator, went to the next floor, and supposedly phoned her mother and informed her that she may get arrested. As soon as she stepped out of the elevator, Kesha was met with Prince with guitar in hand and a beanie on her head. The reason behind this intrusion was to drop off her demo with the musician in an effort to gain notoriety and kick off her career. Prince allegedly stood there with a dumbfounded expression as Kesha waved her CD around. She then placed it on the table and made a run for it. One of the security guards caught up to her though and tossed her out, but Prince was supposedly nice about the whole situation. According to her though, the purple one had never reached out to her about the CD. The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon wasn't the only interview in which Kesha admitted to her trespassing shenanigans. She also referred to it in various other interviews, but Prince never responded to these remarks. Entertainment has been a need for the human species throughout history. It began with simple art forms such as painting and sculptures, and then went through jesters and circuses. Later, outdoor festivals emerged through Greek amphitheaters, where plays were held and songs were sung. The art of the film industry rose following the creation of the camera, the printer, and the projector. Now in the modern era, while film is still a prevalent source of entertainment, many find solace in songs and music. Whether it's the symphonies of Beethoven or the tones of Taylor Swift, the music industry has flourished. But with the increase in demand, there comes an increase in supply. Celebrities must perform for the masses on stage, on TV screens, on social media, and for produced songs. It almost seems like too much for just a singular individual. Many modern-day pop singers found themselves in the middle of theories about whether or not they wrote their own music. Fans and skeptics questioned the existence of ghostwriters in certain songs. It turned out, though, that this concern had some truth to it. Most modern-day pop songs have been alleged to be written by a small group of obscure individuals. With the increase in supply and demand, it would be difficult for singers to sit day in and day out trying to form new catchy lyrics to entertain the masses, so they're left with no choice but to hire a group of co-writers. While this may appear to be a scandalous act, the co-writers haven't gone uncredited. Confirmation of this conspiracy can be found in the album credits, which add the supposed ghostwriters along with the main figurehead. One such celebrity who's been accused of not writing her own song lyrics is Katy Perry. The writer's credits on her albums just confirm that there are a few co-writers involved in the making of her music. In the case of the album Prism, which featured songs like Roar, Unconditionally, and Dark Horse, 26 people were listed as writers. This includes Katy Perry, Sia, Stargate, Adam Baptiste, Benny Blanco, Bonnie McKee, and 19 more. Perry wasn't the only one at the center of this theory, though. Many believe that Taylor Swift has written her own music as well, given that her songs are so personal and emotional. In her 2021 album titled Red, featuring songs like I Knew You Were Trouble and We're Never Getting Back Together, 14 writers were listed in the credits. Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift's names appeared among Dan Wilson, Espen Lind, Gary Lightbody, Mark Foster, and Max Martin, among others. Another common name mentioned in the credits is Max Martin, the man who's cracked 54 songs on the Billboard Top 10, which is 20 more than the Beatles. Max Martin even won a Grammy for these 54 songs. So the next time theories abound about singers not being the legitimate writers behind their music, just be sure to check the credit. There's no doubt that many musicians, singers, and songwriters gained worldwide fame early on in their careers. Often, this surge in notoriety grabbed the attention of fans and conspiracy theorists, who suggested sinister plots and outlandish means. Some pointed to the shadowy background organization, the Illuminati, who've been accused of running the world and other nefarious activities, while others point to Satan and singers selling their souls. But the truth behind the quick-to-fame stars is far more mundane than we may think. It involves one of the most habitual aspects of being a human: bribery. For just a small price, aspiring artists could rise above the self-made and hard-working individuals. Record labels, and sometimes artists themselves, exchanged cash for radio promotion. This act of corruption marred the performances of such figures like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, The Platters, Jackie Wilson, Frankie Lyman, and many others. But it wasn't just the prominent 60s singers that found themselves in the center of such a scandal. Many modern-day celebrities are still carrying out such conspiracies in an effort to maliciously rocket to the top of the charts. Many have wondered and theorized how modern-day, just starting-off singers have jolted right to the top of the charts. In 2019, the truth behind such a scandal came to light when Rolling Stone published text messages between top label executives and radio stations. These texts were found to reveal the exchange of money for radio promotion of aspiring artists. The messages from Zapp, a music industry veteran and a vice president of leading record labels, were being sent to a radio station. The words used in the messages included paying and billing. Zapp had also messaged a radio station employee stating, quote, "Tell me when you move up stuff. I could have billed on Khaled and BSB moving up." Later that same month, Khaled sat with a pair of singles on the Hot AC chart, with the famous Backstreet Boys sitting just outside the top 20. 2018 messages from Zapp revealed that he asked the station employee to move up 5 Seconds of Summer, with the next in line being Flora Cash. Another text read, "Can we move Ellie Goulding to a steady 40 a week, and ex-ambassadors to start 5 a day?" The number of plays for each of these mentioned musicians increased during the month in correspondence with the messages through the vice president of the label. Dean Lewis also found himself in the top 10 on the Hot AC chart after Zapp ensured he didn't get squashed out by other aspiring artists. Zapp's texts confirmed that by bribing radio stations, he aided record labels with the airplay adjustments. The artists themselves, though, had no knowledge that this was even going on, and swam in the idea that fans were just smitten with it. Other names that were mentioned in the text included Pink, Shawn Mendes, and Ed Sheeran. Another example of payola's usage was Taylor Swift, with her song Look What You Made Me Do. It was clear that her song was getting some negative updates, but then it took a sudden switch when it surged to number 1. The text messages confirmed the theory that some artists were just rising to fame too quickly, surpassing already established figures, and possibly with the aid of shadowy figures. The king of pop, Michael Jackson, is still regarded as one of the most successful musicians to have ever lived. In 1994, while Jackson was secretly marrying Lisa Marie Presley, something else was underway. It was the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the 2D platformer video game. The game was set on the floating Angel Island, including its guardian, Knuckles the Echidna, as the player's rival. Gamers were in awe of the new layout and improved gameplay, but they also began to notice something odd with the game's soundtrack. The music that accompanied the adventure was strikingly similar to the music of pop icon Michael Jackson. His involvement in the Sonic the Hedgehog soundtrack remained nothing more than a rumor for years to come. Past interviews merely hinted at possible involvement, while others claimed that his music was removed from the game or not used at all. There's no doubt that Jackson was a big fan of the Sonic franchise and was on good terms with Sega, the franchise owner, after having licensed his music for Sega's Moonwalker. Fans noticed the similarities between Who Is It from Michael Jackson's 1992 album Dangerous and the game's Ice Cap Zone soundtrack. The chord structure between these two is noticeably similar. Interestingly, the Carnival Night Zone aspect of the game features the same glass-breaking sound and the stop-start shouting as heard at the start of Jam, the opening number of the same album. The closest resemblance between the soundtrack of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Michael Jackson's music, though, can be found during the credit roll. When the music is slowed down, there's a rather distinct similarity to the opening bars of the 1996 ballad Stranger in Moscow. This conspiracy theory didn't rest even after the company denied the allegations. Theorists pointed out that Jackson had visited the Sega Technical Institute in 1993, as confirmed by the former executive Roger Hector during a 2005 interview. Hector explained that his appearance there was nothing more than a drop-by to say hello, and that he just really enjoyed playing the game. Yet in another interview with Matt Forger, the game's sound engineer, Jackson and his co-composers wrote 41 tracks for the release. Forger also stated that there was a lot of mouth percussion coming from Jackson, who would always be laughing and joking around. But still, for the next 20 years or so, the star's involvement in the game was just a tale. It wasn't until 2022 that video game designer Yuji Naka revealed the truth about the soundtrack. It was alleged that the music was recorded by Jackson and his team. The icon had written and recorded complete tracks for the game during its production. But while the music sounded like Jackson's, there was no credit to him in the game. This is because in 1993, assault allegations were underway. It's been alleged that the game developers opted to leave this icon's name out of the mix, since it had become synonymous with the word assault. This also explained why there was denial among some of the developers involved and the reason behind the conflicting stories. The 1960s was a time of music, where many musicians emerged from the woodwork, giving us music that served as later inspiration and influence. One such artist was Cass Elliot, known mostly as Mama Cass through her 1960s pop sensation The Mamas and Papas, a vocal group. Folk singer Cass already had success as a solo act, and she performed with the Mamas and Papas and they became an overnight success. Cass's life would unexpectedly become woven with another musician though, Keith Moon. Keith joined the Sea Cadet Corps and was given a bugle, his first musical instrument, which set him on the path to a musical career. At the age of 18, he joined the local London band The High Numbers, which is now known as The Who. Keith exhibited a unique drumming style, rolling the sticks along the skin instead of using the typical banging motion. But with the desire to be the center of attention, his life would take a self-destructive turn. These two names would become synonymous due to a persistent conspiracy and circulating rumor that placed both musicians at the same age and same place at the time of their passings. These two icons probably never crossed paths in their lifetime, despite being in the music industry, in separate bands, and having some mutual friends. With unreliable sources and misconceptions, the truth behind the rumor that the pair had passed away in the same apartment remained a mystery. There is no doubt, though, that Cass and Keith were the same age upon their demise. Cass was born in 1941 and passed away in 1974, while Keith was born in 1946 and had his life ended in 1978, placing both of them at the age of 32. This confirmed part of the connection theory between the musicians. In April of 1974, Cass collapsed in the studio of The Tonight Show. It would later be attributed to exhaustion, and she was discharged from the hospital. Months later, though, after having completed her final Palladium show, she was due to head to Mick Jagger's birthday party, which would go on all night. After the party, she was to attend a brunch followed by an afternoon tea that a United States journalist was hosting. At this time, the 32-year-old had been borrowing an apartment from a fellow American singer, Harry Nilsson. The apartment was situated on the corner of Curzon Street and Curzon Square in Mayfair, London. It had the address of apartment 12, 9 Curzon Place, Shepherd Market. On the 29th of July in 1974, Cass returned to the apartment. By this time it was evening the following day, and she was hungry after being on her feet for 36 hours with performances, encores, and the events that came after. A sandwich was prepared for her, which was found sat on a bedside table untouched, and she had drifted off to sleep. Her body was found in the bedroom by close friends who had gone out to check up on her, with the cause being ruled as a heart attack. Keith Moon lived an extravagant and eccentric life. On the 7th of September in 1978, Keith was invited as a guest by Paul McCartney to watch the preview of the film The Buddy Holly Story. He began making his way home, which on this day was at apartment 12, 9 Curzon Place, Shepherd Market, Mayfair, London. He too was a friend of Nilsson. He had asked the fellow musician if he could borrow the apartment for just a short while. Nilsson was reluctant to say yes and believed that the apartment was cursed. Pete Townsend, the Who guitarist, convinced him to let him stay there, claiming that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. That day, he arrived at the place with his then-girlfriend, Annette. Keith had woken up at 7:30 a.m., stating that he was hungry. Reluctantly, Annette cooked him some lamb. After clearing his plate, the drummer headed to the bedroom, where he nestled himself in the same bed that Cass Elliot had occupied just 4 years prior. His girlfriend retreated to the sofa, where she would sleep until 3:40 that afternoon. When she ventured into the room, she found her boyfriend lying on his stomach with his arm over the side of the bed. She could hear no breaths escaping him and believed something was wrong. After having called an ambulance, it was alleged that the musician had met his demise through the form of a prescription medication, which was used to combat alcoholism. This ultimately confirmed the rumor that both Keith Moon and Cass Elliot passed away in the same place at the same age, putting the misconception and theory to rest. Nilsson at this point became distraught. This event concluded that the flat was cursed, and he opted to sell it and move away to Los Angeles. The name Nikki Sixx is familiar to most rock enthusiasts. He was the founder and bass player in the band Motley Crue. After having performed as a bassist in various Los Angeles bands, Sixx formed Motley Crue with drummer Tommy Lee. For 114 weeks, the successful album Dr. Feelgood remained on the charts. The band's autobiography, The Dirt, would also become a bestseller, which was later adapted into a film. Adding to the various successes of Sixx, he also hosted a radio show called Sixth Sense. Even though he was a self-made successful musician, he still couldn't evade some odd conspiracies. One such theory revolved around a supposed imposter. Much like the Paul McCartney theory, it was posited that Sixx had passed away and was replaced by a clone or a lookalike. The clone's name was Matthew John Tripp. In 1998, Tripp came forth with such bold claims that the public willingly ate up. The theory was so outlandish that it couldn't have been made up. According to him, Motley Crue member Mick Mars approached him and claimed that Sixx had been involved in a car wreck and that they needed a replacement. It's quite obvious that this theory was nothing more than the ramblings of an attention-starved fan. Another theory declared Sixx deceased as well, and for quite some time, these allegations traveled through the music world. It may come as a shock, but the rumor that the Motley Crue member met his demise is actually completely true. At least for 2 minutes it was. At the peak of his career, Sixx was allegedly struggling with substance abuse, which of course affected both his personal and professional life. It turned out that there was indeed truth to the rumors that the musician had passed away. According to reports, on the 23rd of December, 1987, Sixx was rushed to the hospital for a suspected overdose. On that day, he and fellow musicians were partying when Sixx allegedly passed out cold. But this overdose wasn't like the others. He was turning blue, and no one could wake him. Sally McLaughlin frantically gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but to no avail. The paramedics arrived at the scene and gave the musician a shot of adrenaline, but still nothing. For exactly 2 minutes, Sixx was declared clinically deceased. Just a moment later, the paramedic injected him with another syringe of adrenaline though, reviving him, but not before the unconscious rock star could have quite the out-of-body experience. His experience was detailed in The Dirt, Confessions of the World's Most Notorious Rock Band, where he explained that he tried to sit up, but he couldn't move his body. To his surprise though, he suddenly shot straight up as if he weighed nothing. When he looked down, he could see the tattooed container that he once inhabited. He was lying on a gurney covered by a sheet and being pushed toward an ambulance. Amid this chaos, radio shows got word that the famed musician was deceased, birthing the conspiracy theories that Nikki Sixx was no longer living. Much to everyone's surprise though, he emerged alive and well, but with an incredible story to tell of his brush with the Reaper. The untimely passing of our most revered musicians sparked hurtful rumors and far out there conspiracy theories. Conspiracies swirled about Amy Winehouse's passing, along with Paul McCartney, Jimi Hendrix, and John Lennon. Theories range from CIA hits to blatant homicide and the Illuminati. Among the clone replacement theories, the 27 Club, and fake passings, there's another that blames these passings on interpersonal relationships. Fans have turned to record labels, bosses, managers, and more. There exists only some truth to this theory, where the untimely passings of many musicians occurred at a suspicious time. Many notable deceased artists met their demise when they opted to explore alternative options, leave their bands, pursue a different life, or ruin their public image. Sinister facts behind some of these suspicious passings have served as a basis for various allegations. There's no doubt that the passing of Jimi Hendrix was viewed as the most tragic rock incident. Theories abound as to who took his life, whether it was the narcotics, the wine, the CIA, or his own manager. His record label has been placed under fire for supposedly being involved in the passing, because he was going to be steering in a different direction. While this claim cannot be confirmed, there is an aspect of the theory that is true. Hendrix did meet his demise as he was parting ways with his old persona and establishing a new band. In 1966, the Jimi Hendrix Experience came together with Chas Chandler, a bass player who became the star's manager. He convinced Hendrix to head to London and join forces with bassist Noel Redding and drummer Mitchell. In 1967, they released their first single, and in 1969 they performed together for the last time as a band. It was also this year that Hendrix was establishing a new group called Band of Gypsies with Billy Cox and Buddy Miles. It never truly took off, and sadly the project they were working on would never be finished, since he passed away just a year later. Jimi Hendrix wasn't the only one to have met an untimely end around the same period, as making new decisions and following a different path. Prior to his passing, Kurt Cobain was unhappy with Nirvana, and opted rather to go solo or explore a different career entirely. As the success of the band continued to grow, there was a growing friction between the band members. It was known that he was going to be scaling back on his Nirvana presence and exploring less mainstream projects, perhaps even going solo. Kurt Cobain joined the 27 Club on the 5th of April in 1994. 8 months prior to this, he stated in an unpublished interview that he was going to be quitting the band to join his wife, Courtney Love, and her band, known as Hole. And just 8 months after making this statement, Cobain was deceased. Sam Cooke's passing was also the subject of theories, with claims pinning the incident on the music industry as well. Fans cited the musician's pushback against the record industry, and Cooke forming his own label as evidence for the theory. Cooke founded SAR Records in 1961 while signed with RCA Records. He was recording other performers and pushing back against the rest of the recording industry. He also founded a publishing company called Cags Music. 3 years later, Cooke became a homicide victim. Other examples in this theory include Elliott Smith, who was planning on leaving his label and focusing on independent projects, while Jim Morrison became disillusioned with the industry, and Prince was planning independence. It's said that the mystery surrounding the passing of 30-year-old silent film star Virginia Rappe was the first ever scandal to rock Hollywood, and it's one that remains unsolved to this day. Despite the fact that many people believe another actor was responsible for ending her life. In 1921, Virginia was a model and actress with a promising career. She had appeared in 13 movies, one of which starred one of the silent film era's most famous stars, Roscoe Arbuckle, also known by the nickname Fatty. Arbuckle, on the contrary, had appeared in more than 100 silent films, a few of which starred the famous Charlie Chaplin. He was already well known to audiences and was considered somewhat of a national treasure. But on the 9th of September 1921, everything was about to change for both of these actors. It was Labor Day, and film director Fred Fischbach was throwing a party in San Francisco's St. Francis Hotel that was being held in 3 adjoining rooms. Most of the attendees were working in the movie industry, and among the invited guests were Virginia and Arbuckle. The party lasted an astonishing 3 days, with a lot of liquor to be had, despite the fact that this was during the Prohibition era. One of the other guests at the party, a woman named Maud Delmont, later told detectives that she saw both Virginia and Arbuckle consume a fair amount of alcohol, and that at one point during the 3 days, she heard him say that he'd been waiting for Virginia for 5 years, and now he finally had her. They then left the party and went to one of the bedrooms together. But just a few minutes later, guests at the party heard Virginia screaming in pain, and they rushed to the room to see what had happened. When they entered the room, they found her on the bed, fully clothed, but writhing in agony. The first thing she said was that Arbuckle had done something to her, but Arbuckle claimed that she had fallen off the bed and somehow hurt herself. When a doctor was called, he guessed that Virginia had simply had too much to drink, and he gave her some medication to help her sleep. but 3 days later she had to be rushed to a hospital as her condition only worsened, and the next day she passed away from complications stemming from a ruptured bladder. People speculated that Arbuckle had assaulted her, and at one point his immense weight had caused her to suffer internal injuries. After an investigation, he was taken into custody. This had a severe effect on his career since all of his movies were removed from movie theaters and other actors started speaking out against him, with one describing him as a vulgarian from the gutter. When the trial started, it was clear that the prosecution would have a tough time proving that Arbuckle was the culprit, since most of the witnesses had been drinking. For example, Maud Delmont had had between 8 and 10 whiskeys when the event occurred. Arbuckle stated that he was merely taking care of Virginia, who was feeling ill at the party, and that he had in no way assaulted her. Thanks to a lack of evidence, his charge was downgraded to manslaughter, and his films were once again being screened in theaters. In the end, he was found guilty of illegal drinking and nothing else. No one else has ever been accused of a crime, and to this day we have no idea what really happened in that hotel room on that night decades ago. In 2007, 36-year-old Tony Harris, a talented former Washington State basketball player who played in several countries including Brazil and countries in Asia as well as Europe, was starting to act out of character. According to his friends, he'd become paranoid, and they were concerned for his mental well-being. Tony had returned to Brazil that year after working as a counselor in Seattle for a while, but when he got the opportunity to play for the Universo BRB basketball team in Brazil, he decided that it was time to focus on the game once more. His wife later told investigators that she last heard from him on the 4th of November that year, when he told her that he was trying to catch a cab. His teammates had, in the meantime, started noticing his strange behavior, and they got wind that he was in Becerra, where he was seen asking people for money. His mother-in-law reported that he'd emailed her during this time, stating that he was growing increasingly worried that he was being watched. He explained that whenever he entered a room, everyone would stop talking, and he was now just about certain that someone was going to try and harm him. He told his wife that he could sometimes hear his teammates whispering about him while they were in the locker room. He thought he heard them asking about him having an affair, which wasn't true, and that he'd left the US because he had contracted a disease. At one point, he even went as far as to bring the negative results of a test for the disease to the locker room to prove that that wasn't the case, but his teammates seemed confused when he showed it to them, leaving Tony baffled. One night, he spoke to his wife over the phone, and his demeanor scared her, since he sounded as though he was making his final arrangements, saying things like, "Tell my son I love him, that I'm proud of him, and that he needs to finish school." His paranoia started to badly affect his playing, and after every game he would rush back to the safety of his hotel room. On the 2nd of November, he emailed his wife saying that he couldn't figure out why he was being so paranoid, and that he believed someone had been in his room since the TV's volume has been changed while he was out, though this was likely done by a room service staff member. The following day, he played another game and asked one of his teammates, Esteban Ferreira, to give him a ride to the hotel. Once there, he invited Ferreira up to the room where he immediately started packing up his belongings, to Ferreira's confusion. He stated that he wanted to go home and that he was only taking the essentials with him. He confessed to his teammate that he was terrified while they were driving to the airport. Once there, he planned to see a friend in Natal, but realized that he'd left his passport with a team member. Ferreira then drove Tony to a bus terminal where he got on a coach and traveled to Becerra. There, he was seen begging for food and money and walking the streets a few times over the following days, but on the 18th of November, he was found deceased near a fishing hole in a wooded area. No one was ever able to figure out why Tony had become so paranoid, or who he believed was after him, and his passing is one that may remain unsolved for a very long time to come. Another mystery that occurred during the Prohibition era is the strange passing of 49-year-old William Desmond Taylor, who was a famous movie director in the 1920s. Alcohol was illegal in Los Angeles at the time, but nevertheless, on the 21st of February, 1922, Taylor and Mabel Normand, a silent film actress, were in his apartment enjoying a few cocktails. At around 7:45, Normand decided it was time for her to go home, and Taylor walked her to her chauffeur-driven car. They said goodnight and Normand left, leaving Taylor to walk back to his apartment. But in the next few seconds, his neighbors heard a sound that they described as something similar to a car backfiring. One of the neighbors, Faith McLean, went to her window to see what had happened, and she later told investigators that she saw a suspicious man wearing a long coat and a plaid cap standing in Taylor's driveway. He glanced at her, turned, and walked into Taylor's apartment. This is when McLean noticed that the man had a slightly effeminate walk, and she would later admit that the person she saw may have been a woman. One of Taylor's other neighbors, Hazel Gillen, also saw this person but was unable to describe them. The neighbors thought nothing more of it, and nothing more was done until 7:30 the next morning, when Henry Peavy, Taylor's houseman, arrived at the apartment and found Taylor deceased in his living room. Bizarrely, the first call that Peavy made was to Famous Players, later known as Paramount Pictures, and representatives arrived on the scene long before the authorities did. They removed several letters from the property, along with illegal alcohol that was in the apartment, and told Peavy to clean the crime scene as there was a lot of biological material on the floor where Taylor was discovered. When the police were finally called, a lot of evidence had either been removed or compromised. One of the first suspects to emerge was Mary Miles Minter, an actress who'd publicly professed to be in love with Taylor, but whose advances had always been rejected. When she was questioned, she stated that she hadn't seen Taylor for quite some time, but it was then found that she had been in his apartment on the day that the crime was committed. Furthermore, 3 blonde hairs, thought to belong to Minter, were found on Taylor's pants. It was speculated that Minter arrived at Taylor's apartment that night and threatened to cause a scene if he were to reject her again. Investigators say that he then hugged her to calm her down, but that the firearm then accidentally discharged and ended his life. It was also believed that the firearm belonged to Minter's mother, Charlotte Shelby, but neither was ever arrested, likely because they were close friends with District Attorney Thomas Lee Woolwine, who was later accused of accepting bribes. Furthermore, police officers would later report that when they started making inroads into the case, they were either told to stop looking into the matter or to investigate a different avenue of inquiry. Some people suggested that Shelby disguised herself as a man that night and snuck into Taylor's apartment looking for Minter. Known to be an obsessive mother, Shelby found her daughter there, lost her temper, and fired at Taylor, ending his life, though this was never proven. On the 22nd of November, 1963, many people's lives in the US were changed forever when they learned that the then president of the country, John F. Kennedy, had been assassinated. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested and charged with the crime, but many people felt that something was amiss and that there was more to the story than meets the eye. This sentiment was shared by Dorothy Kilgallen, a reporter who became well known in the country after she published a piece in which she detailed Frank Sinatra's involvement with organized crime. She was clearly not one to be intimidated or silenced, and so it's fair to say that her investigation into Kennedy's assassination didn't sit well with a lot of influential people. She held interviews with people who were present when it occurred, and also questioned Jack Ruby, the man who ended Lee Harvey Oswald's life. She grew ever more suspicious that the case was not at all what it seemed, and voiced her opinion that Oswald should have received a fair trial, but was denied this by a man who was thought to be connected to organized crime, and who was allowed to simply walk into the Dallas Police Department to end Harvey's life in full view of several officers. It was later discovered that she had planned to meet with an informant who claimed to know the truth about the assassination but never got the chance. She also noted that Police Chief Jesse Curry had made conflicting statements about the incident. He claimed to have heard shots ring out from the school book depository, but copies of police communications showed that he ordered his men to run to an overpass where several people were seen standing. He was also the one who allowed Jack Ruby access to the police station before attacking Oswald. Kilgallen also learned that Oswald had met with Ruby, Bernard Wiseman from the John Birch Society, police officer J.D. Tippett, and an unknown man at the Carousel Club 8 days before the assassination, though it isn't known what that meeting was about. Furthermore, she claimed that the police had checked a certain firearm found in the book depository into evidence, and then later swapped it out for Oswald's weapon. Soon, she started to worry that the FBI had tapped her phone, and that she was being investigated. Nevertheless, she was determined to make her findings public, but on the 8th of November, 1965, she was found deceased in her house in New York, reportedly having lost her life to alcohol and illegal substances. The coroner was unable to state whether it was an accident, but her passing left many people feeling suspicious, given the case that she'd been working on and the information that she was planning to take public. Strangely, most of Kilgallen's notes on her investigation suddenly disappeared after her passing and were never found again. The 40-year-old Egyptian actress was known by her fans as the Cinderella of the screen, thanks to her beauty and acting talents. She'd become one of the most famous and most influential actresses in the Middle East, having appeared in more than 90 movies in her long and prosperous career. Soad was born in Cairo, Egypt in 1943 as one of 15 children. Her family embraced their artistic side, as her sister was also a well-known actress and singer, while her father worked as a calligrapher. She made her singing debut on a radio show when she was just 3 years old, and when she turned 16, she landed her first role in a movie adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. She quickly made an impression in the movie industry and was hailed for having pure, raw talent. She'd been married several times in her life, first to a director, but that marriage only lasted 2 years. She then married a different director, and this time they remained together for 11 years. Her next marriage fell apart after just a few months, and last she married a scriptwriter named Maher Awad, who was her husband until her untimely passing in June of 2001 in Westminster, London. There were rumors that she was once married to singer Abdel Hafez, though this has never been confirmed, despite some of her friends reporting that they had once grown close but never married. While she could easily have been typecast as a romantic film actress, she refused to let this happen and starred in films in many different genres, including political films that addressed tough issues such as poverty and gender inequality. She last appeared in a film called The Shepherd and the Woman, which was released in 1991. In 1979, though, she was busy working on a film called The Fierce, in which she played the role of a circus acrobat. During filming, she had an unfortunate slip that caused an injury to her back, and she would receive treatment for it indefinitely. It had an adverse effect on her career, and for a while she withdrew from the film industry and the spotlight. In 1992, she relocated to Paris, France, where she underwent surgery, but this did little to ease her discomfort, and her health started to decline. She then moved to London, where she sought out further treatment and never returned, choosing instead to start a new life in England. 4 years later, though, tragedy struck while Soad was visiting a friend, Nadia Yousri, at her Stewart Tower apartment in Westminster. At some point, she was out on the apartment's balcony when she fell 6 floors to the street below, instantly losing her life. The news of her passing came as a shock to everyone who knew her, and understandably they wanted to know what had happened. But try as they might, they were unable to learn any details of the incident, as the authorities refused to divulge any information, and to this day, her passing is shrouded in mystery, with no further details ever having been released. In the 1950s, Lana Turner had made a name for herself in the film industry, not only thanks to her acting talents, but thanks in part to her beauty. She was known to play parts in which she played a good girl gone bad. It's rumored that she was discovered by a Hollywood film journalist while they were in the same pharmacy, leading to her first role in a film called They Won't Forget. Following that, she landed roles in several romantic dramas, and in 1946, she starred in the well-known movie The Postman Always Rings Twice. She landed several more roles after that, but is also remembered for appearing in the soap opera Falcon Crest. Her own romantic life, though, was rather unstable. She was married 8 times, twice to actor and restaurateur Stephen Crane. But in 1957, she was working on a film called The Lady Takes a Flyer, when she started receiving flowers and phone calls from a man called John Steele. It was later revealed that Steele was actually a gangster called Johnny Stompanato, who'd been infatuated with her for years, and when she confronted him, he stated that he used a pseudonym because he was afraid that she wouldn't have anything to do with him if she found out who he really was. Turner had her doubts about Stompanato, but decided to enter a relationship with him anyway, since she'd just gotten divorced from her 5th husband. Stompanato soon started reaping the benefits of the relationship, since Turner was paying his gambling debts and living expenses, something that did not sit well with her 14-year-old daughter. Soon, the relationship started to sour when Stompanato began assaulting Turner. They often had arguments that turned violent, and on more than one occasion, Stompanato threatened even more violence on her and her daughter if he didn't get his way. Less than a year after meeting him, Turner decided that she wanted out of the relationship, and when she traveled to England with Sean Connery to film the movie Another Time, Another Place, she took the opportunity to inform Stompanato of her feelings. But the gangster refused to accept her rejection and started accusing her of having an affair with Connery. He flew to England to confront her, but she refused to see him. But this prompted him to barge through security on the film set, after which he produced a firearm and pointed it at Connery. But Connery sprang into action, twisted the weapon out of his hand, and landed a hard punch to his face, prompting Stompanato to run away. He was eventually detained and deported back to the US. The following year, Turner was to attend the 1958 Academy Awards, and when Stompanato found out that she would not be asking him to accompany him, she was outraged. She told her daughter that she would be ending the relationship for good on the 4th of April that year, and when he arrived at her house that night, she did just that. He flew into a rage and started threatening Turner once again, but the conversation was overheard by her daughter, who was upstairs in her bedroom. Fearing for her mother's safety, she ran into the kitchen, grabbed a sharpened blade and attacked him after mistakenly thinking he had a firearm raised at her mother. At her trial, Turner's daughter was found not guilty of murder, and she would eventually decide to go live with her father, Stephen Crane. But many people believe that it was actually Turner who ended Stompanato's life, and that she was coached by attorney Jerry Geisler to say that her daughter was responsible, since she would be more likely to get away with it. No one knows for certain who yielded the blade that night, and since the investigation has been closed for decades, it's unlikely the case will ever be reopened. 24-year-old Chris Trickle is remembered by fans as a very talented NASCAR driver who lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. He was the son of another NASCAR driver, Dick Trickle, who had won more than 1,200 feature races in his career. Chris was a talented racer from a young age, though he preferred riding motorbikes when he was just 8 years old. When he turned 18, he started focusing on stock car races and was named Rookie of the Year in late models just 2 years later. In 1993, he racked up 10 total wins, followed by another 8 the next year. He exceeded this accomplishment in 1995 by winning 16 races and ending in the top 10 a further 12 times, leaving no doubt that he was a very talented driver. 1996 was a little less successful, as he only won 1 race, but he also tried to qualify for the Craftsman Truck Series but failed at both attempts. He became known around the world when he competed in NASCAR Winter Heat Series that was broadcast on ESPN2, and was slated to join the Craftsman Truck Series the following year, but his life was tragically cut short before he had the chance to do so. On the 9th of February, 1997, Trickle was living with his girlfriend, Jennifer Robinson, in a 1-bedroom apartment at his parents' house. He'd made plans to play a game of tennis with one of his friends, Greg Hadges, and set out at around 9 p.m., but he never made it there. About 10 minutes after leaving the apartment, he drove onto Blue Diamond Road where a car started driving alongside his. Moments later, the occupants of this car opened fire on Trickle's vehicle, and he was struck in the head. He was rushed to the hospital but fell into a coma. He briefly emerged from the coma in October of that year but quickly fell back into it again. He contracted pneumonia but survived and had to undergo as many as 5 major surgeries since he'd sustained serious brain damage. But on the 25th of March, 1998, he passed away from the injuries caused by the attack. Strangely, no witnesses came forward to identify the car that had fired at him, and conspiracy theories began to emerge. Soon, people speculated that it was a targeted attack, though no one could find any reason why someone would want to end Trickle's life, as he had no enemies and was well liked by those who knew him. Others speculated that it was a crime of opportunity, and that his life had been ended by someone who was looking for a thrill. This is the most widely accepted theory, since no suspects were ever named during the resulting investigation. Then there's the theory that he'd gotten involved in a road rage incident, during which the driver of the other vehicle lost their temper and decided to fire at Trickle's car. If this was indeed the case, that person has never been identified, and it's very unlikely that they'll ever come forward. Trickle's family offered a $35,000 reward to anyone who came forward with information, leading to the case being solved, but no one ever did, and the case has since been closed, since it passed the statute of limitations and will therefore never be solved. Jack Nance, the actor best remembered for playing the role of Henry Spencer in the David Lynch horror film Eraserhead, had by all accounts a difficult adult life. When he was still a child, he was struck by a car, which caused him to suffer a back injury. But when he graduated from university, he started focusing on an acting career. In 1964, he relocated to California and joined the American Conservatory Theater, which is based in San Francisco, where he saw some success under the direction of David Lindemann. In 1972, he met director David Lynch after Lindemann recommended him for the Henry Spencer role in Eraserhead. The project would take 5 years to complete and initially wasn't well received, but it soon became a cult classic, and Nance became a well-known face among horror movie buffs. His performance also had an impact on director Stanley Kubrick, who insisted that the cast of the movie The Shining watch Eraserhead before they started filming. Nance became one of Lynch's go-to actors, and he appeared in many more of his movies, including Dune, Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, and Lost Highway, among others. But he was fighting a few of his own personal demons. Up until 1986, Nance had struggled with alcoholism, but that year he decided to make a change and managed to kick the habit. He started working in the hospitality industry to make a decent wage and landed a job as a clerk at Hotel Hollywood. But he appeared in a few more films such as The Blob and Colors. But in 1993, he relapsed into his old habits following the passing of his wife, Kelly Jean Van Dyke. He had started drinking again and was eventually asked to leave his accommodation at the hotel after he discharged a firearm at his TV. He suffered strokes in 1995 and 1996, and in 1997 he was removed from the set of the movie Joyride after just 1 day of filming because he was found to be extremely intoxicated. Then, on the 29th of December, 1996, Nance was having lunch with 2 of his friends who noticed that he had a black eye. When they asked him about it, he told them that he'd gone to a Winchel's Donut House at 5 a.m. that morning, and that he was walking in the store's parking lot and passed 2 Hispanic men. And as he was known to do, he made a snide remark in their direction. One of the men retaliated by punching him, and considering he was now 53 years old, it did more damage than he realized. He went home after the lunch meeting complaining of a headache. Nance's account of what had happened has been disputed though, since Leo Bulgarini, the screenwriter who had joined him for lunch, went to the donut shop to ask if anyone had seen the altercation, but no one had, and Bulgarini doubted if the story was true. The next morning, Bulgarini went to Nance's apartment to help him do his laundry, but when he arrived, he found the actor deceased in his bathroom. A coroner found that he'd passed away due to a subdural hematoma that was caused by blunt force trauma, and the case was handled as a homicide investigation. Though some people believe he slipped in his bathroom and banged his head, others believe his story and hope that the culprit would be caught one day to face the long arm of the law. But this never happened, and Nance's case has never been solved. In 2010, 64-year-old Ronni Chasen had paved a career for herself as a famous publicist who had worked with some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry. She was very familiar with Hollywood premieres, having attended many throughout her career, and the night of the 16th of November, 2016 was no exception. She had attended the premiere of the film Burlesque and left the venue at around midnight that night, but would lose her life before she made it home. Reports on the incident state that she'd made a left turn at the Sunset Boulevard and Whittier Drive intersection when she was attacked with a firearm. She was found in her car about 30 minutes after leaving the premiere, and it was determined that she'd been hit 4 times and unfortunately later passed away. Investigators struggled to find anyone with a motive, and it was only 4 days later that they got their first lead. A man named Laramie Baquet had seen the case featured on America's Most Wanted and contacted the police to report that they should question his neighbor, 43-year-old Harold Martin Smith. 5 days later, they traveled to Smith's house, but when they arrived, he was deceased. The weapon he used to do this was analyzed and found to be a possible match for the weapon used to end Ronnie's life. It was believed at the time that Chasen had attempted to rob Ronni, but that the robbery went awry, and after firing at her, he made his getaway on a bicycle. But not everyone was convinced. Though Smith's weapon was found to be a possible match, it was by no means a certainty that it was the weapon used against Ronni, and those who knew him could see no reason for him to be riding a bicycle at that time of night. No witnesses came forward to report that they'd seen him at the scene, and investigators struggled to find a motive, other than the fact that he was struggling financially. He and Baquet, his neighbor who had turned him in, often shared food stamps, but it seemed unlikely that Smith was the culprit. This led to much speculation, including suggestions that Smith was paid by someone to carry out a hit on Ronnie, but no evidence was ever found to support this theory. Bakay stated that he grew suspicious when Smith entered his apartment that night, asking if Ronnie's case had been reported on the news. He then stated that he'd left his bicycle in Beverly Hills more than 16 miles away and that he needed to collect it. When he saw the report on television, Bakay remembered that Smith had acted strangely that night and informed the police that he'd been in that area on the night of the incident. The case was promptly closed, and Beverly Hills police revealed that Smith was thought to be the attacker and that the case had been closed, but many people felt this was a little too convenient. Ronnie's Prada handbag was still in the car with her, which would almost certainly have been taken if a robbery had been committed. Furthermore, Smith was never captured by any security cameras in the area, of which there were many. Many questions remain in Ronnie's case, but the police consider the matter closed and have no intentions of revisiting the case in the future. John Simon Ritchie is better known by his stage name of Sid Vicious, which he used while playing bass in the English punk band the Sex Pistols. He spent his time moving from place to place with his mother, who was addicted to illegal substances, but in the 1970s he found somewhere that he belonged in the London punk scene. He became the drummer for Susie and the Banshees, as well as Flowers of Romance, and before long was well known in the area. In 1977, he was hired as the bass player for the Sex Pistols, replacing Glenn Matlock, and shortly after met Nancy Spungen, who originally hailed from Philadelphia. Nancy had a much easier upbringing, as she was part of a much more normal family, but had also spent time in a mental facility and a school for troubled children, from where she ran away to New York when she was 17. She became active in the New York punk scene and eventually relocated to London, where she became a groupie. But she wasn't well liked by her fellow groupies, who described her as an obnoxious loudmouth, but she was tolerated by the bands that she followed, since she had a knack for finding illegal substances. According to those in the know, she first tried to get together with the Sex Pistols frontman Johnny Rotten, but when she was rejected, she started focusing on Sid Vicious. The pair quickly fell in love in what many have described as a road to disaster. They found an apartment in London where they moved in together, and soon their use of illegal substances started to get out of hand. The police would knock on their door occasionally, but the couple always managed to evade arrest by one means or another. But the rest of the band members weren't as fond of Nancy as Sid was, and on one occasion their manager, Malcolm McLaren, went as far as attempting to abduct her so that she could be sent back to the US, but Sid intervened and the plan fell through. But she was not allowed to attend any of their shows during their US tours, and this caused Sid to act out even more. During one performance in Dallas, he assaulted a member of the audience with his bass, and by the end of the tour the band had decided to call it quits. Sid took this hard, and coupled with the fact that Nancy wasn't around, he went off the rails, ending up in a Queens hospital after using illegal substances. The couple reunited, but the relationship started to spiral out of control. On the 12th of October, 1978, she was found deceased by a porter in room number 100 of Manhattan's Chelsea Hotel. It was determined that she'd been attacked with a sharpened blade, and the porter reported that Sid was walking around the hallway, stating that he was the one who was responsible. He later told investigators that he was indeed guilty, but later recanted his confession, stating that he was very inebriated that night and had no memory of what had happened. Nonetheless, he was arrested, but released on $50,000 bail shortly after. Less than 4 months later, he passed away due to illegal substance use, leaving the case unsolved, and while many of those who knew Sid maintain his innocence, the truth may never be known. There's no doubt that Tupac Shakur left an indelible mark on the world of rap music, and his passing at 25 is one that's still shrouded in mystery, since there are conflicting accounts of what happened on the night that his life was ended with a firearm. Tupac was born in New York in 1971 and was named after a Peruvian revolutionary called Tupac Amaru II. His family didn't stay in one place for long, but eventually decided to settle in Baltimore. He was seen as a bright student while attending the Baltimore School for the Arts, but before he could graduate, his family uprooted once again and moved to California. This is where his life took a different path, as he became involved with the sale of illegal substances and gangs in the area. This time would, however, serve as a great source of inspiration for his music. In 1991, he released his debut album called Tupacalypse Now, which resulted in his style being compared to artists like Public Enemy and NWA, and the album made a good impression amongst other rappers. Shortly after the release of the album, he landed his first movie role in an urban crime drama called Juice. The following year, he appeared in Poetic Justice alongside Janet Jackson, and the year after that, he released another album, and it became clear that he was headed for a successful career, whether in music or film. Unfortunately, Tupac remained affiliated with gangs, and in 1994 he was arrested for assault. He would still be in prison when his next album was released, but after spending 8 months behind bars, he was released on parole. His next album sold more than 5 million copies in the first year after its release, and he would go on to appear in 2 more movies called Bullet and Gridlocked. Then, in September of 1997, Tupac was spending time in Las Vegas, where he'd watched a Mike Tyson bout at one of the city's many casinos. Upon leaving the casino in a vehicle, he was accosted and fired upon. He was rushed to the hospital but passed away 6 days later. Most people believe that the attack was the result of an ongoing dispute between the East and West Coast rappers, but others believe there's more to it, with some believing he didn't actually lose his life that night. Some conspiracy theorists have suggested that Tupac hatched an elaborate plan to fake his own passing, and that he's currently alive and well living in Cuba. 2 people were named as suspects in the attack, namely the rapper Notorious B.I.G. and Crips gang member Orlando Anderson, but they also soon lost their lives in a similar manner, adding fuel to the conspiracy fire. Some tabloid media outlets have repeatedly reported that Tupac had been sighted in different areas of Cuba, and people have suggested different methods by which he could have faked his own passing, and some believe he got word that a rival was planning an attack, which prompted him to switch with a body double before fleeing the country via helicopter. One man named Rick Boss claims that Tupac is no longer in Cuba and is actually hiding out in New Mexico. He created a documentary called Tupac: The Great Escape from UMC, and when the rapper's family didn't object to the title, he became convinced that Tupac was still alive. Others have claimed that he's living in Malaysia, where he continues to make music, and at one point a theory emerged that he would return to the spotlight 7 years after his supposed passing. But this never happened, and it's far more likely that he did really pass away on that fateful night, ensuring that his legacy will forever live amongst his fans and the rap industry. Beyoncé has been the subject of many conspiracy theories over the years, and in recent times, a new theory has emerged regarding her sister, Solange, who found success as a singer and actress. Some of the more outlandish theories that have been suggested regarding Beyoncé include strange and often baseless claims about her marriage to Jay-Z, who's also a hugely successful rapper in his own right. The first to be suggested was that the couple only got married because Beyoncé was lonely, and that she didn't really find him attractive. While this may seem like a ridiculous claim, the theory only gained further traction in 2013, when her uncle stated in an interview with Celeb Buzz that she denied being with Jay-Z at first, and that the suggestion seemed to disgust her. Furthermore, it's been claimed that the couple decided to get married for financial reasons, since they're both very successful musicians and would see their fan bases expand as a result. In 2014, the pair embarked on a joint tour called On the Run, and as soon as it started, speculation began to run rife that they would be getting a divorce as soon as the tour was wrapped up. That was meant to happen a decade ago, and so that theory has been thoroughly debunked, despite it being backed up by some people who were close to them at the time. One weekly tabloid paper reported that Beyoncé had been spending time with actress Gwyneth Paltrow, who she then asked for advice about divorce, but the couple is still together and seems to be as happy as ever. But a few more sinister conspiracy theories have also made the rounds through the decades. Some people are still adamant that Beyoncé is a member of the Illuminati, with some theorists going as far as to suggest that she's Satan himself, though most people find this suggestion laughable. At one point, it was also claimed that Jay-Z was cheating on his wife with another singer, Rihanna. The rumor started thanks to security footage from an elevator in which Beyoncé's sister was seen attacking Jay-Z. It later came to light that the rapper wanted to attend an after-party hosted by Rihanna, but Beyoncé's sister, Solange, wanted him to go home. She could be heard asking why he couldn't just go home, to which he replied, "You're one to talk," prompting the rest of the altercation. Following this, another theory came to light that Solange isn't actually Beyoncé's sister, but her daughter. For this theory to work, people started claiming that the singer is actually 7 years older than she claims, and that she gave birth to Solange when she was still a teenager. The theory started online when someone who claimed to have worked at Beyoncé's record label for about 4 years stated their claims were backed up by Beyoncé's cousin, and that they'd caught a glimpse of her driver's license, which showed her actual age to be much older than her fans have been led to believe. No actual proof of any of these theories has ever been presented, and as with most conspiracy theories, they shouldn't be taken too seriously. The identity of the Zodiac Killer, a serial killer who's said to have ended the lives of at least 5 people between 1968 and 1969, is one of the greatest mysteries of our time. But modern conspiracy theorists believe he's been hiding in plain sight for many years, since United States Senator Ted Cruz is the culprit. It's believed that the Zodiac Killer's first 2 victims were a teenage couple that was attacked with a firearm in a remote area close to San Francisco. He wouldn't strike again until a year later, when another couple was attacked in near-identical circumstances, though one of the victims survived. Following this incident, the culprit contacted the police to report the crime, and to state that he was responsible for the attack that had been carried out a year earlier. He would then wait another year before carrying out another attack, and again, one of the victims escaped with their life. Then, in 1969, he attacked and ended the life of a taxi driver, and while most people believe him to be the Zodiac's last victim, others think that an 18-year-old student whose life was ended with a sharpened blade in California in 1968 should also be attributed to him, though his involvement in that case has never been fully proven. Whoever the killer was, he was clearly enjoying the attention his crimes were getting. Between 1969 and 1974, he sent letters to the police in which he taunted them. The letters were always signed with the same trademark symbol, and started with the words, "This is the Zodiac speaking." He also sent 4 different ciphers to newspaper outlets, 2 of which have since been solved, but offered up no clues as to the attacker's identity. While it's assumed that the Zodiac spree ended here, some suggested that he remained active into the 1980s, and that the number of victims is actually much higher. A California schoolteacher called Arthur Leigh Allen, at one point, was accused by the public of being the culprit, but no proof was ever found that he was in any way involved, and the Zodiac's identity remains a mystery to this day. But conspiracy theorists aren't so sure. The first rumors that Ted Cruz was the Zodiac Killer came about after a Twitter user claimed that during one of his upcoming speeches, Cruz would be confessing to the world that he was the killer. Following this, many people who listened to his public addresses stated that they found him to be creepy, and his popularity started to decline. But Cruz took these allegations in stride, choosing to see them as a joke rather than claims that were to be taken seriously. In 2017 and 2018, he posted to his Twitter account and included encrypted messages that were clearly supposed to be tongue-in-cheek references to the Zodiac Killer. But this only gave the theory more traction, as some theorists started believing he was once again taunting people with these strange messages. It's been pointed out that the Zodiac's first victims lost their lives by his hand in 1969, when Cruz would have been 18 years old, and that the actual culprit was thought to be much older at the time. The theory has since all but died out, but there are a few conspiracy theorists who insist that Cruz is guilty and hiding in plain sight. These days, the entire saga is seen as a bit of a joke that somehow got out of hand. Norma Jean Baker, better known to most people as Marilyn Monroe, was born in Los Angeles on the 1st of June 1926. During her childhood, she was placed in 12 different foster homes since her mother spent a lot of time in a mental health facility, and when she wasn't in foster care, she lived in an orphanage. She would marry for the first time in 1942 while working in an aircraft factory, but the marriage only lasted a few years before it ended in divorce. Following this, she decided to enter the world of modeling, and in 1946, her efforts paid off when she was offered a contract with 20th Century Fox. This is when she changed her name to Marilyn Monroe, but after appearing in a few unremarkable movies, her contract came to an end. She continued her modeling career and soon landed several noteworthy film roles. She found her first taste of fame in 1950, after briefly appearing in a movie called The Asphalt Jungle. And when she appeared in All About Eve, she landed another contract with 20th Century Fox. Soon, she started acting in films alongside movie stars of the time, and before long, she became known as a love goddess, thanks to the way she was marketed by the film studio. She'd become a household name across the world, and in 1954, she became even more popular when she married Joe DiMaggio, who was one of the New York Yankees' star players at the time. This marriage would only last for about a year, and following this, her life started to take a strange turn. She was no longer content with the path of her life, and instead turned her focus to becoming a comedian. In 1959, she appeared in her first serious role as the character of Sugarcane in the film Some Like It Hot. By this time, she was married to playwright Arthur Miller, and in 1961 she appeared in a film directed by him called The Misfits. Miller had written the role specifically for his wife, but the process put a strain on their marriage and they divorced in 1961. Her health started to decline amidst rumors that she was having an affair with then-President of the US, John F. Kennedy. She was fired from the film Something's Got to Give, and this seemingly had a big impact on her, as she retreated from the public eye, by many accounts becoming somewhat of a recluse. On the 4th of August, 1962, she was found deceased in her house in Los Angeles, and her passing was ruled to be the result of illegal substance use. But thousands of people refute this to this day, resulting in many conspiracy theories being born. The first of these was the suggestion that her life was ended by the CIA, since they wanted revenge on the Kennedy family after the failed Bay of Pigs invasion which took place in Cuba. Theorists claimed that the CIA knew about an affair between Monroe and Kennedy and felt that her passing would impact the family negatively. The second theory stems from the first, as it's been suggested that Kennedy had Monroe assassinated because he was worried that she would talk publicly about their affair, which would have a serious negative impact on his political career. Then there's the theory that she lost her life thanks to the incompetence of her doctors, who accidentally gave her too much medication, leading to her passing. It's said that these same doctors and Monroe's housekeeper then conspired to make the scene look as if she'd ended her own life. The last and most outlandish of these theories is that Monroe had to be assassinated after she learned of the existence of extraterrestrials while having an affair with John F. Kennedy. Theorists claim that she was planning to leak information about the infamous Roswell crash of 1947, but never had the chance. It's also been suggested that her life was ended by the mafia, but most of these theories have been dismissed as false, though many questions about the night of her passing remain unanswered. Kurt Cobain is remembered as one of the most famous faces of the grunge era, which only lasted for a short period of time in the 1990s. His band Nirvana is seen as one of the most influential in the genre, along with other bands such as Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden. His unique vocal style resonated with fans, and to date, 3 studio albums that they released have sold more than 75 million copies. But it's no secret that Cobain had a turbulent life, filled with substance abuse, depression, and problems in his marriage to fellow musician Courtney Love, who was the frontwoman for a band called Hole. His parents have stated that his troubles began when he was 9 years old, and are likely a result of their divorce. Cobain once said in an interview that he felt sorry for his parents at the time, but also resented them, since he felt ashamed when compared to other children in his school who didn't live in broken homes. According to some reports, he started using illegal substances to deal with the pain in his stomach that lasted for years, since doctors couldn't figure out what the cause was. Before long, he became addicted, and would remain this way for the rest of his life. On the 5th of April 1994, he was found deceased at his house in Seattle, Washington. An investigation revealed that he had taken his own life with a firearm, and the news sent shockwaves through the music world. It was seen as a tragic and avoidable event that curtailed a very promising career. But not everyone was convinced that the official findings were truthful, and soon conspiracy theories started swirling that there was more to Cobain's passing. The most prominent of these is that his life was ended by none other than his wife, Courtney Love, despite this claim being refuted by detectives, a forensic linguist, and the band's manager. Another theory suggested that Cobain did indeed end his own life, but that he was too depressed to do so himself and asked someone to assist him. This theory hasn't gained much traction, but some theorists still believe it to be a possibility. Then there's the theory that he was somehow being manipulated via mind control, either by the government or someone who decided that it would be better if his life was ended. This is one of the less popular theories and isn't often spoken about. Next, it was suggested that he hadn't intended to end his life, but accidentally discharged the firearm that was found with him. This theory is easily dismissed thanks to the note that was found when Cobain's body was discovered. Furthermore, it's been suggested that the government wanted Cobain out of the way, since he was a symbol of counterculture at the time, and needed to be silenced before the band's fanbase grew too large. While most people have accepted that Cobain ended his life by his own hand, thousands of people are convinced that something more sinister happened on the day that he passed away, but will likely never know what he was thinking at the time, or whether someone else was involved in his tragic passing. Eminem, the rapper whose real name is Marshall Mathers, didn't have the easiest of childhoods. He grew up in a poor family and had a difficult relationship with his mother Debbie, who would successfully sue him for defamation of character many years later thanks to a song he released that included details of his troubled upbringing. He started rapping in Detroit, Michigan when he was 14 years old, and when it became clear that he didn't have much interest in completing school, he dropped out and decided to focus on his rapping career. In 1996, he released his first album entitled Infinite, but it wasn't well received, and he had to resort to making money by working as a dishwasher and a cook. The following year, though, things started to look up, as he won second place in the 1997 Rap Olympics, which were held in Los Angeles. This drew the attention of rapper Dr. Dre, who then became his mentor and producer. In 1997, he released the Slim Shady LP, on which the song My Name Is appeared. The song and its accompanying music video were huge successes, and the album sold millions of copies, won him 2 Grammy Awards, and Mathers knew that he'd finally made it as a musician, though he had many detractors who thought his music was shallow, and in some cases prejudiced. Nevertheless, his career was on track, and in the years that followed, he gained a massive fan base and sold millions of albums while collaborating with some of the genre's biggest and most influential artists. He remains popular among fans of the genre today, but has also become the focus of a conspiracy theory, which claims that the man who appears as Eminem today is actually an imposter. It all started in 2006, when some of his fans started noticing that his voice wasn't quite the same as it was in the past. While most people would attribute this to the fact that he was getting older, or years of constant touring, some conspiracy theorists had a more bizarre explanation. They suggested that the real Eminem, Marshall Mathers, passed away in 2006, thanks to an article published on a Spanish website, which falsely claimed that he had lost his life in a car accident. Some fans then started looking for proof that he'd been replaced by a doppelganger, and before long, online forums were awash with photos that, according to them, showed how the imposter's features were different from the real Slim Shady's. They focused mostly on his facial features, such as his jawline, which in their opinion was no longer as sharp as it once was. Though this is a common occurrence when someone gets older, and in no way points to him being replaced. Next, they started analyzing his lyrics, which they felt had taken on a different tone from the ones he'd written before 2006. Conspiracy theorists had now started suggesting that he'd been replaced, not by another man, but by an android, as strange as that may seem. This theory only gained more followers when a video emerged online in 2013, showing the rapper glitching out during an appearance on ESPN, while others felt that his behavior in the clip was true to Eminem's character. Then, in 2016, a fellow rapper called B.O.B. took to Twitter with a series of posts in which he claimed that human cloning had existed for a long time. Some conspiracy theorists took this as an allusion to Eminem and took it as further proof that he had been replaced. Luckily, most people believe the changes in Mathers' appearance to be the result of the aging process, and his new lyrical style to be thanks to him becoming more mature as time went by. But there are still many who are adamant that he's actually an android. Marissa Tomei is best remembered for her role in the 1992 film My Cousin Vinny, but not many are aware that she started her acting career after landing a role in a soap opera called As the World Turns, which remained on the air for a staggering 54 years, from 1956 to 2010. Her first movie role was in a film called The Flamingo Kid, and she made a few appearances in theater productions in New York, before finally landing a role in My Cousin Vinny. Many people were taken by surprise when Tamai had won an Academy Award for her appearance in the movie, though that success didn't immediately translate to bigger movie roles. After winning the award, she appeared in films alongside actors such as Christian Slater, Jenna Rollins, and Adam Sandler. She has also appeared in a few movies that tanked at the box office, most of which were comedies that failed to impress audiences. Unfortunately, one of her most remembered moments is her 1993 Best Supporting Actress Oscar win, which has spawned several conspiracy theories over the years, since some people believe it was a mistake. Tamai faced stiff competition at the awards, since other more established actresses had also been nominated, but in the end, Tamai was announced the winner, much to the surprise of those in attendance and fans watching from their living rooms. Many felt that the award wasn't deserved, and soon conspiracy theories started to see the light of day. Many thought a mistake had been made and put the blame for the incident squarely on the shoulders of the man who presented the award, Jack Palance, who was 74 years old at the time. Those who believed in the theory suggested that he had difficulty reading the winner's name from the card that he'd been given, and he started panicking and just blurted out the last name on the teleprompter, resulting in Tamai walking away as the victor. It's further said that the Academy was too embarrassed to admit to the mistake, and decided that it would be better to leave sleeping dogs lie, and it would only cause further controversy if the Oscar was taken away from her. According to some sources, the theory started thanks to someone who was said to be the former son-in-law of a distinguished Academy Award winner, who claimed to have inside information that the award had been erroneously awarded to Tamai. This person's name was never made public, and this claim is thought by most people to be a sensationalist lie. Many others have pointed out that similar mistakes have been made at the awards at times, which were then corrected, and it would then have been far easier to admit the mistake rather than cover it up. Whatever the case may be, Tamai will forever hold the title of Best Supporting Actress for that year, and if she was announced as the winner by mistake, it's far too late to do anything about it. Another celebrity whose passing has been the subject of conspiracy theories for decades is the famous reggae musician Bob Marley, who passed away on the 11th of May, 1981, at the age of 36 due to melanoma. Marley was born in St. Ann Parish, Jamaica in 1945. His father was never part of his life and passed away when Marley was just 10 years old. He and his mother eventually relocated to Jamaica, but there he was bullied while living in a poor neighborhood. This led to him learning how to fight on the streets, and before long he earned the nickname Tough Gong. It would later become the name of his recording studio, as well as several other businesses that he owned. It's said that while he was still a child, he became adept at palm reading, often telling the fortunes of people in his neighborhood with eerie accuracy. But after he relocated to Kingston, he refused to read any more palms, as he decided to pursue a career as a musician. Not many people know that he didn't make a start to his career in reggae, but rather started a ska band with Bunny Wailer and fellow reggae legend Peter Tosh. The band was first called the Teenagers, before undergoing several iterations, and eventually they settled on the name the Wailers. He lived in the US for short periods of time during the 1960s and 70s, landing a job as a forklift operator at the Chrysler Assembly Plant in Newark, Delaware. He decided to move to the US after his mother moved to Delaware, but he soon moved back to the Caribbean. He got married to Alfreda Anderson in 1966, and they stayed married until his passing in 1981, despite both having affairs over the years, and his wife giving birth to 2 children who were fathered by other men. In December of 1976, he was found wounded when a group of 7 men stormed his house during an assassination attempt that was carried out for political reasons. Several other people were injured, but thankfully everyone recovered. Despite his massive popularity among his fans, he was seen as a controversial figure by many, since he was outspoken about his political views and atrocities that had been carried out in the past by governments of the world. In July of 1977, Marley was diagnosed with malignant melanoma, which started under one of his toenails. Those who were close to him stated that he fought against the disease as best he could, but 4 years later, he sadly lost the battle and passed away. Conspiracy theorists claim that the attack on his household years earlier was ordered by the CIA, since they disagreed with his political stance, and since tensions between the Jamaican Labour Party, which was supported by the CIA, and the People's National Party were at an all-time high. It's also been claimed that they attempted further assassination attempts, but that these failed each time. It was believed that a former CIA agent named Billy Oxley only exacerbated this theory when he claimed to have carried out as many as 17 hits for the CIA during his career, one of which, according to him, was Bob Marley, who was injected with a cancer-causing substance. But it was later revealed that no agent named Bill Oxley ever worked for the CIA, and that the claims had all been fabricated by a fake news website, which was promptly shut down, bringing into question all the other conspiracy theories regarding Marley's passing. Today, Marley is remembered for his music that's inspired generations of musicians and continues to do so today. He passed away more than 4 decades ago, but he still sells more records than many well-known artists each year, proving that his legacy will remain intact for many decades to come. It's said that there are 2 types of people in this world: those who are fans of the High School Musical TV series Glee, and those who hate it. While it may not be to everyone's taste, there's no doubt that the show has millions of fans all over the world. And while it was on air, it became somewhat of a phenomenon. It ran for a total of 6 seasons, and included some very famous names in its cast, including Naya Rivera, Lea Michele, Corey Monteith, and Adam Lambert, to name but a few. But as popular as the show was, it had its troubles, and conspiracy theorists have suggested that the production was cursed, thanks to several unfortunate events that befell some of its cast members. The first of these occurred in 2011, when Corey Monteith admitted that he'd been struggling with an illegal substance addiction, and as a result, dropped out of high school when he was 16 years old. He was admitted to a rehab facility when he was 19, but would return to similar facilities in subsequent years. Unfortunately, he was never able to overcome his addiction, and in July of 2013, it claimed his life. Another cast member, Mark Salling, also had a difficult life after appearing in the show. In 2013, Roxanne Gorzela, his ex-girlfriend, sued him after he assaulted her, and in 2015, he was arrested on such a disturbing charge that we can't even mention it here. He pleaded guilty to that charge, and thanks to a plea deal, he was slated to spend 4 to 7 years behind bars. But he never served this sentence, as he ended his own life in January of 2018 at the age of 35. Then, in 2020, Samantha Marie Ware came forward to report that her co-star on the show, Lea Michele, had made her life awful while they were working together. She stated that Michelle was verbally abusive towards her, along with what she described as other microaggressions that made her question her career choice as an actress. This resulted in other cast members coming forward to reveal just how hard it was to work with Michelle, since she was said to be an unpleasant person. She allegedly refused to let certain cast members sit at her table, as she felt that they didn't deserve to be on the show. Others claimed that she was disrespectful towards them, calling them ugly to their faces, and one co-star, Craig Ramsey, went as far as to call her a despicable, horrible human being who lost touch with reality. Michelle eventually offered an apology to everyone involved, but it was dismissed by most as being insincere and scripted. It's said that this had an adverse effect on her career, as she lost out on several business deals. Other events that led to the belief in the Glee curse include Becca Tobin, whose boyfriend passed away from a heart attack in 2014. Matthew Morrison lost his job as a judge on the show So You Think You Can Dance amidst accusations that he'd started a relationship with one of the contestants. In 2020, Naya Rivera lost her life while swimming at Lake Peru and the Los Padres National Forest. Blake Jenner was arrested and charged with DUI 2 years later, and over the years, cast members have been involved in several failed relationships, leading to many believing that the Glee curse is very real. Jimmy Page, the guitarist for the band Led Zeppelin, is sure to go down in history as one of the most influential and talented rock musicians of all time. The band has sold more than 300 million albums during their long career, ensuring their legacy as one of the best-selling artists of all time. Their most famous song, released in 1971, is entitled Stairway to Heaven, and at the time it made a massive impact on the rock scene. But in the 1980s, it received even more attention, thanks to the Satanic Panic, which claimed that rock bands were hiding evil lyrics in their songs, which could only be heard when they were played backward, a process known as backmasking. Led Zeppelin was first mentioned in this regard by a preacher called Michael Mills, who claimed that Stairway to Heaven contained hidden messages such as Master Satan and There's No Escaping It and Serve Me. Following this, another preacher named Paul Crouch claimed to have found different messages in the band's songs, including one which he stated contained a message about a small tool shed where the devil made people suffer. Luckily, many people saw past this as a thinly veiled attempt to discredit rock music, and it was pointed out that these words and these messages rarely sounded correct, and these two preachers were looking for evil where there was none. Nonetheless, many people fell for it and started playing albums by other bands backward, claiming to hear all kinds of messages that simply weren't there. This also led to another conspiracy theory that's still very much alive today, that Jimmy Page sold his soul to the devil in exchange for proficiency at guitar playing and fame as a musician. The band took little notice of these claims, and they've refused to speak about them in interviews, but this has only caused the theory to grow, since many people took this to mean that they'd been caught and didn't want to discuss the matter. It didn't help things when Page bought a manor in the Scottish Highlands. While this may not seem like anything strange, it soon came to light that the house once belonged to Aleister Crowley, a known occultist who's said to have performed certain magic ceremonies at the property. The manor is rumored to be haunted by the spirits of its past owners, and it's burned down twice over the years, but is currently being restored and is still a Category B listed building, which means it's considered to be historically important. The theories regarding Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page are sure to continue for many years to come, but as always, they should be taken with a grain of salt. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.